what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing, dude?
It's good to talk to you, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. Your voice sounds completely different than I'd imagined based upon your look.
Not the first time I've heard that.
I thought you'd have this, like, deep, booming voice.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher than it looks like I would have. Yeah.
Well, I'm used to the streaming side of things, you know? You sound completely different on the streaming side than you do on a phone.
Oh, that's the beauty of editing, isn't it?
So how are you, man? Like, besides, before we even start the interview and all that stuff, man, how
Yeah.
you doing?
A little bit rough right now, but overall, I'm doing better than I have been for a long time. Still having some pretty shitty moments, but overall, still better than I was. So I'll take it.
That's good, because I know you struggle with, like, you know, a lot of the same mental conditions that I do.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to see when somebody is going. You know, dude, it's a shitty thing to say, but it's nice to see somebody going through the same struggles you are. It's like you don't want to wish a struggle on somebody, but at the same time, you're like, man, I'm glad I'm not alone.
It's so true. It's a really cathartic feeling, and I mean, you can get into that with like a musical aspect as well too, where it's just like when you hear like dark lyrics or dark music, and knowing that you're feeling the same emotions that someone else is. It's a great feeling that you can have, and of course you can have that through so many other things, and just like knowing that other people are struggling as well too, it makes you feel less alone.
Well, yeah, it's like you get some kind of cathartic experience based upon, you know, knowing somebody else is struggling. You're like, you know what, that's awesome, because Josh is just as depressed as I am. You know, it's like this weird dichotomy.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works, but just that human connection is so important too, and sometimes it does take like some of the darkest aspects of humanity like that to be able to really connect, and some just like of course there's so many other things you can connect on, but just like on that deep level, when it's like, hey, I'm struggling through a lot of shit right now too. It feels so good to know that you're struggling and you're still here.
Well, yeah, it's that whole, it's like, dude, your suffering makes me happy. And it's not that I want you to suffer, it's just that I know I'm not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we both have, I think, some of very similar, I mean, yours is probably way more than mine, because of the shit you've dealt with is a lot more heavy than mine. But that doesn't necessarily negate any of the suffering that we both have, you know?
Absolutely. And it's those shared experiences. I mean, I know there's some things that you've gone through that I'll never experience, and vice versa, but I don't think that takes anything away from the pain that we both feel, and that cathartic feeling knowing that we're both still here. We're able to talk to each other right now, and we're still continuing forward.
Yeah, it doesn't lessen anything. Like, you know, if I had a family member commit suicide and you never did it, but you might have had some other experience, it doesn't lessen any of it just because one experience is different than the other.
Exactly.
And that's why I kind of have followed you over the years and watched your stuff and, listened to it and followed you, is because you understand that my suffering is no different than yours, even if the situational thing is different.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all have different paths in life, and sometimes it takes us into the same intersections of things that we go through in life. And, sometimes going through mental health struggles, I mean, there's a lot of twists and turns that come through that, and there's a lot of different ways to get there, but the feeling that you have is still the same. You still experience the same kind of emotions. No matter how drastic it is, you can still feel the same way.
Well, I just have this big problem because I've had, like, mental health struggles my whole life, as you have. I've had a lot of friends that have, throughout the industry and stuff too, that have also had some mental health struggles from the beginning of their life. And I think we live in this, like, weird, tumultuous point now where mental health struggles used to be the black sheep, and now it's like the cool thing. So now you have people that don't have mental health struggles that are devaluing the system because they tell people they have mental health struggles, to get kind of a sympathy card, you know?
I have noticed that. I've also kind of noticed along the same lines where they feel like they're having that, but it just turns out they're having a bad day. It's not mental health
Right.
struggles, and they can't differentiate it.
Yeah, and they use that as an excuse because they have a bad day, so they say it, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, now everybody's paying attention to me. Oh, well, I'm going to tell everybody now I have this mental health problem because now they're going to pay attention to me and I feel gracious and glorious at the end of the day. Like, dude, what you're doing is you're devaluing the people that actually have the problems. You know, it's like, not even just mental health. If you go into homelessness, any of the other stuff, it's like if you have a bad week monetarily and financially and fiduciarily with your job, it doesn't mean you can call yourself homeless, because what you do is devalue the people that actually have that problem.
Absolutely. And it's just amazing that feeling that there is in the world right now. I mean, I've especially noticed it ever since I started doing interviews back in 2011, is just like that instant gratification is just so huge nowadays, where you need to have that constant reaction thanks to social media and so many other things, whether you're looking for people to support you, looking for people to say nice things about you, whether you're looking for people to give you all these grand opportunities. Like, people want it immediately. They just want to be recognized. They just want everything handed to them immediately, and sometimes it doesn't even matter the kind of reaction that they get. They just want the world to react to whatever they're doing.
Yeah, they want a serotonin kick real quick.
Yeah, and just going back into the mental health thing, it's just like that's not how it works. Like, just having a couple people saying that, like, oh, they're so sad to hear that I'm not doing good today. That's not instantly going to make my depression go away. That's not how real depression works.
Yeah, you want depression's a tough one, because I fortunately I don't suffer from depression. I don't have depression, and I was misdiagnosed, throughout my childhood growing up as, being depressed. But also, I'm a little older, so, we're talking years and years before they really had a grasp a little bit more than they do nowadays on it. And it was just, I would say, a misdiagnosis, and they throw you on this medicine, and they do that, and it didn't do a damn thing because I wasn't depressed. I was feeding off of negative energy. So we had to figure out what was wrong in terms of the mental health, and it wasn't depression. It was just I was feeding into what I was being given, but I was feeding into it the wrong way. So I wasn't depressed. I was just misinterpreting signals, let's say.
Oh yeah, and I can totally understand that as well too. I mean, especially when I was growing up and I see all of these negative connotations that started happening, and when you see it so much, you start to think that that's just the way things are supposed to be. That's the way I'm supposed to act. That's the way others are supposed to be, and you can take the fact that someone's feeling really down, so oh, that's just life. I'm supposed to feel really down as well too, or oh, I do all these terrible things. I'm supposed to do terrible things too. I mean, there's so much nature versus nurture that can really go into mental health, and there's so much that is unexplained. And sometimes when you just simply take yourself out of a negative environment, whether it's people, whether it's the place that you live, whether it's the job that you have, there's so many different things that can go along with it. But once you start taking out the negative things, you can just realize that that was the thing that was taking you down.
Well, and I also believe that it's this kind of like ease for explanation. Like, so I just had 2 weeks ago, I just had COVID for the third time, right? It wasn't, I'm not deathly ill. I'm not on my deathbed. It's not going to kill me, but it's fucking uncomfortable as shit. I just want to sleep. But I have to get up at 6:30 every morning. I got to take my kid to school, and then I got to go at 2 o'clock, and his school's an hour away. So we're talking 4 hours a day in a car. But I got to go pick him up. So I don't get to rest. I don't get to get over it. So I'm talking to doctors, and they're giving me this medicine and everything else. And everybody talks to me, and they're like, oh, my God, you're so depressed. No, I'm not. I'm just fucking tired, man.
It it's so true, and when you're battling things like that, and you have so many responsibilities that you got to take care of. I mean, yeah, it can have like a physical look to it, and people could think that you look depressed or anything like that. It's just that you have, and just like you mentioned, it's just like you're tired. You need to be able to rest up. You need to be able to battle COVID. You need to be able to handle your responsibilities for the day. And when you're not able to do that, it's gonna look physically like you need sleep because you do need sleep.
Right, and half of my thing was, you know what, I should not have answered the phone when you called because it might seem like I'm depressed, but I really want to sleep right now. You know what's depressing me? The fact that I'm talking to you about this bullshit. Because all I need is 2 hours of sleep right now and maybe a bottle of chicken soup or something.
Oh, I completely understand that. And
But
yeah,
I think we have this like mental health capacity thing. I've been involved in mental health my whole life, and I think now it's like we're looking for problems instead of diagnosing the problems.
yeah, and that's the thing. I wish there was a way to be able to uh, change the outlook on that. Trying to find what to do about the problems that you deal with in mental health. I mean, there's so many ways to be able to lead to anxiety, depression, all the other aspects of mental health issues. But it's just like everyone's looking for the reasoning behind it rather than being able to do anything about it.
Right, and I also think we're kind of a little bit coddled too, because you know what? We invented a way to put somebody on the moon. We invented the internet. We invented, I'm able to press a button and something in some weird server building in, whether it's California or wherever, is able to send me a TV show and I get to watch it. We were able to do that plenty of years before mental health became an issue. So I think we look for excuses now of, I mean, I hate to use the term, but like this wokeism or whatever. It's like always looking for an excuse for their own behaviors. It's like, oh, now I can explain myself for all the bad things I do. You know why you do the bad things you do? Because you're fucking a human. We haven't learned. Nobody knows if black holes exist. We just assume they do based upon the science that we created to explain what the black hole is. Like, nothing exists unless we say it exists. So we create these excuses rather than just saying, you know what, I'm human, I'm flawed, and we just accept it and move on. Because the more we spend the time trying to explain our flaws and our behaviors, the more we spend the time focusing on them. And when you just say, you know what, you're human, deal with it, then life becomes golden.
It's true. I mean, the moment that you can leave the past behind, you can understand the problems that you're going with, but you won't let it down or let yourself down because of it, and you're able to move forward and you're able to try to make the changes that you need to, life does get better.
Well, and there are some of us, I'm sure you're just as involved in this as I am, that, you know what, we do need some medication to help us. I mean, medical science is a great fucking thing, but we also as humans created that, We do need some medicine to help us with the mental problems that we have. We have to allow ourselves and say, you know what, I need Klonopin, I need this, whatever, drug of choice they deem that you need. But that doesn't mean that we're bad humans. It just means we need a little bit of a kick in the ass, and then we take the medicine, and it makes us feel awesome, and then we live great. But the medicine doesn't work by itself. No, I mean, I don't know any, and I have lots of friends, especially in the music industry, that have mental health problems because we're all broke and the scene is, destroyed and detrimental and is devalued. Plenty of friends on medication, but it's not just the medication. It's not a cure-all. You can't just take a pill and all of a sudden you're happy, because the second that pill wears off, the happiness wears off.
It's so true.
You got to do it yourself too. You have to make yourself into this thing where I understand that this medicine is going to make me feel better, but it is not a cure-all. I have to use this medicine to build myself that I'm going to change as well. And, some people have some really big mental deficiencies too, where you just can't help yourself. You have to have medicine. So what? The brilliant thing is we've evolved as much as humans where you have the medicine. You imagine being extremely depressed and having an anxiety disorder in 1922? Well, you didn't have that medicine. But also, you didn't have the anxiety in 1922 because the world was different.
Yeah.
Maybe the world causes the anxiety.
It really does, and I'm so interested in this kind of stuff too because I do feel like sometimes we do just thrust it upon ourselves. Like sometimes it's just human nature to look for the bad things in life and just being able to feel negative about that. But it's just like you talked about with medication or therapy or whatever you're doing to try to better yourself. There's no complete cure all for any of it. You also have to put in the work, and you have to find that momentum in yourself to try to better yourself as well. I mean, you have to get up, find that motivation to be able to do what you need to do and be able to progress, because medication's not going to do that on its own. Therapy's not going to do that on its own. You have to do that.
Right, it's a mixture. So I'll tell you a quick story about like my son. So my son's in all these gifted programs. He is a fucking genius. I don't know where he got it, not from me, but he is on these gifted programs. So he was in this gifted program, and I think it was like third or fourth grade. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact year. But he would lose his mind. So he would do like a math test, and he would got it done regardless of whatever his grade was. And he would just lose his mind, and he was jumping off tables. He was doing flips. He was, looking for people to pay attention to him, because he was done. And then the rest of the kids are doing their math problems. And so his teacher, dude, she was the greatest fucking thing in the world. So they want to medicate him. Oh my God, he's got ADHD, he's got all this. And his teacher was like, no. He is bored. So what she did is she created this little program, and she said, okay, Soren, when you're done with your, thing, let's grade it. And if you got, an A, a 90 or above, then you're fine. If you got below, then I want you to go back and refocus. And if you get an A or above, I want you to walk around the rest of the classroom, and I want you to help the other kids that are struggling. She gave him something to do. And his doctor that he sees, the psychiatrist and the psychologist, they were both like, he doesn't need medicine. This is what he needs. So some kids are going to need that medication because they're above and beyond, and they have like a brain chemistry that just doesn't work. But I love that the teacher and the doctors work to find out a way without the medication instead of just pacifying something, That was great.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love hearing that so much, rather than just doing the very simple thing of just putting someone on medication and just hoping for the best and trying out all these different medications if it didn't, quote unquote,
that
acting
might work
right.
for somebody.
Yeah.
If you have a problem, your first solution is probably not the right one. So you have to explore all the solutions. Then it's kind of like math, and then you figure out all the solutions, and you say, this is the one that actually works. And I loved his teacher for that so much. She said, we're going to figure out every possible way we can do to get this kid focused and do the best he can. And we might end up with medication. So keep that in mind. It might end up we have to medicate him, but let's try other things. And it ended up we didn't have to. But if it came down to we have to throw a bunch of drugs in the system to get him, okay, so be it. At least you tried your course of just, you tried your discourse. Now you know what's going to be the best for the child.
Exactly.
And I loved her for that. She was so amazing.
And there needs to be more people like that out there because, rather than just like trying to find the easy solution, you try everything that's out there. Just like you mentioned, it is just like math. I mean, you need to find the right components and try to see what works together. And she found something for that.
Unfortunately, I know this just from having, children, but we also do live in a world, unfortunately, where that teacher only makes $30,000 a year, and rightfully so, she says, I'm not going to put the extra effort in because I don't fucking make enough money to do it. So she's right to say that. Like, she should be paid more for the amount of work that she's having to do to not only educate but also parent these children. So if she gives up and says, I'm not going to do the extra work, she is rightfully so to say that.
It's so true. It really is.
And I hate the amount that these teachers are paid, because not only is my son's teacher every day that I drop him off at school, is she an educator, she's also a babysitter and a parent.
Yeah.
And she has to, connect with the parents and say, this is what your child is doing. I'm worried about his development, his education, here's his behaviors and all that. And they're not making enough money to do that. I mean, if I was to be paid $200 to produce your record, I'm not going to fucking babysit you.
It's true. It's just not worth it.
No, and I think it's so, if you go, that's the one beautiful, thing about touring the world, being in a band, is seeing the cultures and the differences and things, and seeing that the way that you have, let's say for lack of a better term, quote unquote, a third world country. Let's say a country that they're not third world, but they don't have the the monetary system we do, the fiduciary system. They still treat their people different, where their educational level is even higher than ours, even though their GP, D and all their stuff is less than ours, because they understand that children are the future. So if we give them the opportunity for the future, then our quote unquote country is going to be greater. But we kind of live here in this country of the here and the now. Like, it doesn't matter how things are going to be in 75 years. You know why? Because I won't be here.
Yeah.
And it's like, you fucking selfish prick,
It's so true. It's just good hearing that, just like being able to see like all these different cultures, and just like being able to get outside of your own bubble, because especially over the last few years with the pandemic, you can start to forget what the rest of the world is like, because especially when you are touring and you are seeing all these different places and you are able to see how the rest of the world works. When you're not doing that, you can easily forget how the rest of the world is not like America. It's not just trying to be selfish and just worry about the here and the now. They want to worry about the future, and they want to make sure that kids have the right kind of education and they get the right tools that they need to be able to better themselves, because that benefits the whole country.
Yeah, and like the pandemic for me, that was a very difficult one. So my manager, who manages like all my production in Europe and stuff, she works, in her day-to-day job is she runs a lab where they deal with viruses. The main thing of her lab is they work with brain cancer research. But they also, within the lab and facility itself, they actually were one of the ones that came up with the COVID test for Roche Laboratories, so like, the at-home tests.
Oh, wow.
So she had a lot of, let's say, insight into what was happening during the pandemic. Now, she's not a scientist herself. She just runs the lab. But I was able to see reports and things like that as it was going on. And for me and her talking every day, it was just this weird anomaly where it kind of took like a culture, let's say as Americans, and this is, hyperbole, this is hypothetical, it's not true, but as Americans, we're like, fuck the virus, this doesn't matter. Well, what that did is it permeated itself into the rest of the world, where the rest of the world kind of during the pandemic became this American mentality, especially in France. France doesn't have the same kind of way that they protest that we do. France, they hold up a sign and then they go have a croissant, But what happened during the pandemic was they held up a sign and then they fought. They adopted this American mentality. And it really showed the true colors of, I wouldn't say people, but influence. Because all the news at the time was about America and the pandemic and what Fauci said and all this stuff. So our influence worldwide changed people's mentality. And now you have peaceful protesters in Paris, instead of holding up signs, are gassing people. And it completely changed the world. We adopted a worldwide mentality of, I'm not going to take this anymore, without understanding maybe you should just listen to somebody. Now, you don't have to believe them, but you at least have to listen to them. And on top of that, if you don't believe them, it doesn't mean you have to go out and fucking gas somebody. So our culture kind of took over the world, which was insane. And then during the pandemic, I actually flew back and forth to Switzerland to produce bands. And I would talk to my ex-wife, and she'd be like, hey, what's it like over there in Switzerland right now? And I was like, it's fucking brilliant. It's awesome. How are you living in your little bubble at home right now, Because I'm here out of the restaurant having a dinner. Now, you can say it's this, overstepping of boundaries, because to get into the restaurant here in Lausanne, I had to show a QR code that proved I was vaccinated, that proved I was this and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's government control and all that. But you're sitting at home, and I'm out at a restaurant having a piece of pizza.
And that does sound way better.
And then you get these people, well, I don't want the government to kind of control me. Dipshit, is your phone an Android? They already know everywhere you've been. Like, really? Did you go into your settings and turn off tracking and all that? What do you mean? How do you do that? Okay, well, they already know where you were. They already know what you bought. And even if you turn it off, they still do. So, you know what? Shut up. Go enjoy a piece of pizza.
Yeah, I mean, you have to live completely off the grid and like live deep in the mountains or something without any kind of electricity or technology to not have people have that kind of information, especially if you dig deep enough. So, if you can get by and you are able to like go out and have something to eat, you're able to do a job that you are willing to travel for, like being able to produce these bands, of course, being able to travel again too. That's so much better than just having to feel like you're stuck at home and not being able to live the life that you want to live.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things, like, I don't get into politics too much. I try and avoid it as much as I can because that's just a recipe for disaster, But at some point, it has to be discussed so you know who you're talking to and where they stand. Now, you don't have to agree, of course, but, like, I don't agree with a lot of the politics that we have here with DeSantis and what he does in Florida. But when he opened up Florida, a lot of people wanted to come to Florida. And dude, we have so many people here now. From my rent has increased a couple $100s a month because of it. But you have these, Californians, you have these New Yorkers that are all coming down because they were sick of the rules and regulations that were happening to them. And Florida was open. Now, I don't agree with a lot of DeSantis' politics, but he basically just said, look, man, we are a race of humans, and if you don't want to go out, don't go out, but I'm not gonna force it on you. And I agreed with that. Like, if I want to go out and risk my life over some virus that we don't really know too much about right now, that's my choice. Sure, thank you for that, But then you had these crazy lockdowns when I would talk to my friends in New York, and they'd be like, we're not allowed to leave my house. Well, you should be allowed to take your own risk. That's up to you. So it was crazy how Florida allowed this. The only problem that happened with that, which I don't agree with, is you had this influx of Californians, these New Yorkers, these even Montanians. All these people moved to Florida, and now my rent went up $500 a month. Go home. I don't want to pay rent because your governor decided to lock you down, And DeSantis does all this crazy, stupid shit. But I do agree with him where he said, you know what? I'm not going to lock you down because if you want to go out and risk it and get sick, that is your choice. It's not for me to tell you. I do agree with that.
And
because it's my choice. If I don't want to get sick, well, I just don't fucking go out.
Yeah, and that is the power of free will. I mean, when you hold people back like that.
Also to music. It's these stupid fucking, like, elitists in music that attack these bands for their records and all that stuff. You know what? If you don't like it, don't fucking listen to it.
Yes.
It's the same thing with the way everybody else locked their shit down. They were told, like, literally a lockdown in New York was like, I don't care if you don't like U2, you're going to listen to their record every day. And in Florida, basically what they said was, okay, well, if you don't like it, don't listen to it. You have the option. You can stay home and say, I'm scared of all this stuff. Or you can go out and go to 7-Eleven and buy an energy drink. That's your choice. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Did it work? Did it, during the whole pandemic, did it fix things? No, who the fuck knows? But it was up to our individual choice. And that's kind of how we live in this country was you're allowed to do what you want. They did the same shit in Switzerland. They said, you know what? You're allowed to do what you want. However, if you want to go into this restaurant, you have to prove with a little piece of paper that you were vaccinated. But everybody in Switzerland said, oh, so literally all I have to do is get a little shot in my arm and put a piece of paper in front of you, and then I can go eat at a restaurant? Okay. They knew there was no, like, RFID chip, and all of a sudden there's this 5G technology that's going to, it's going to make you all of a sudden change your way of thinking because there's a 5G tower. Like, no, they're like, oh, you're fucking kidding me. They look at us as morons because they're like, you Americans are talking about 5G towers that are literally changing your brainwaves and all that. They're like, do you know how technology works? Because they're taught that in school, man.
Yeah, you think it would be that simple.
No, but we're not taught that in school. We're taught to believe what you're told. We're taught to not question things. And I think overtly questioning too many things because you want to prove a point, I think that's wrong. Don't question everything because you want to prove a point. Question the things that you want to learn about. Like, for me, I love learning languages. It's one of my favorite things. I'm interested in that. I think it's very interesting, but I'm not going to question somebody about it. Like, I want to learn Hungarian, right? I'm not going to walk up to a Hungarian person and say, how do you say, how are you doing in Hungarian? And they're born and raised, and they tell me, I'm not going to go, I don't think that's right. But that's what we do in this culture. We tell Hungarians that natively speak the language, no, I don't think that's how you say that.
It's so true.
Because we want to prove our point. Like, what? Fuck your point, man. I deal with it every day in production with these bands where I'm like, hey, man, look, I'm not the best in the world, but I did go to school and to a university for 6 years to learn this. So I'm going to give you what I was taught as a regurgitation. Could be wrong, could be right. But scales they're actually math. So when I give you the formula for the scale, it's not going to change. And then you deal with these guys and you're like, okay, well, we're going to work on mixolydian flat 6. And that means the 6th scale degree is flattened. That's why it's called mixolydian flat 6. And they go, I don't think that's right. It's in the fucking name. Like, really? Are you that so egregious on yourself that you think that 20 years of music, or not 20, but even 200 years of music theory is wrong? No, it's in the name, mixolydian flat 6. But I literally, no joke, dude, have bands that'll be like, I don't know if that's right. Maybe that 6th scale degree shouldn't be flattened. It's in the fucking name. I'm not making this up.
Oh, it's just amazing how that works. And I know you've dealt with bands like that. Of course, you just mentioned that, but I've dealt with that too. You know, when it comes into recording, like the bands that don't want to record to a metronome because they feel like the whole essence of the song is going to be destroyed if they
Dude,
play to a
I have
beat.
dealt with this so much. The biggest argument, I'm sure you have heard this, especially in all the interviews you've done. The biggest argument is when it comes to music theory, and guys go, well, that kind of ruins the vibe and the feel.
Yes.
And my argument with that is, okay, I live here in Florida, and I have to get somewhere in Montana, Iowa, wherever the fuck it is. Now, I can jump in my car and drive and hope I get there, or I can just get on Google Maps and it'll tell me how to get there. Which one do you think is going to get me there quicker, faster, better? It's the same thing with music theory. Just because my map tells me how to get there doesn't mean I'm going to get there, because I have to still read the map correctly.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with music theory. I can tell you that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is a major scale, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flat 7 is a mixolydian mode. But that doesn't mean you're able to use it. And so I think that whole argument for me is a crutch for people that don't understand it, because it's so easy to say this doesn't work when you don't understand it. And I've dealt with that in music school. I dealt with it in students that I've taught in guitar. I don't want to learn a theory. Is it because you don't want to learn the theory because you think it's wrong, or because you just don't understand it? Because if you gave yourself the actual openness, I can teach you how to use it. So just be honest. Just say, hey, man, I'm not going to understand this. I don't have the mental capacity for it. Okay, well, then we'll figure out another way to teach you mixolydian. Maybe we can do pattern-based or draw a graphic or whatever, you know?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, if someone does have the tools to understand something and they are trying to teach something to someone, there's more than one way to be able to show that off. And, you know, sometimes, like, the grand map is not always the way to do that. Sometimes it is graphics. Sometimes it is patterns, just like you talked about. You know, it's like people do learn in different ways, but you have to want to learn at the same time. And again, you know, it's just like it can come with that American mentality that has reached over the world so much, is never wanting to admit that you're wrong, that you don't understand something.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with admitting you're wrong. Because for me, there's two differences, especially with the bands and the guys I work with. There's somebody that will admit they're wrong, but they won't do anything to correct it. And then there's the other guys that will admit they're wrong, and they really genuinely want to learn how to make it correct. And then I also, as a producer, have to say, well, you want to learn how to do this? I can do that. I'm trained in that. I know how to do it. Oh, you want to learn this? Well, fuck me. You better hire somebody else, because I don't know that. But we have this, like, intrinsicacy to not want to admit our faults. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying, I know this scale, but I don't know this scale? There's nothing wrong with it, man. It makes us human. But I think we're so pushed by not only our parents, but by our teachers also, by everything else, that we have to be correct on everything. And especially for males, the toughest part about being a male is you have to be big and strong, and you can't admit your weaknesses, you know? And it's like, as a girl, it's okay to admit your weakness. Well, it doesn't work for males. You can't. You got to be big and strong. You have to fight. And then at the same time, you get the reverse, where it's okay for a girl to admit her weaknesses, but a girl can't be strong because that's not womanly, you know? It's like we live in this, like, weird dichotomy where we're supposed to behave based on some kind of gender bullshit, you know?
Exactly. And with us being human, it's just like we're meant to have that feeling of discovery. We want to be able to learn more. And when you hold yourself back, no matter what the reasoning is, you're preventing yourself from growing, from being able to discover new things. And, again, when it comes into, music, for example, when you're just flat out not willing to learn something, you're stopping the progress of becoming a better musician, being able to learn new things, being able to have that applied to so many different things. And yeah, that can come from any gender, any race, anything that comes along with it. There's so much peer pressure from the past to be able to live a certain kind of way, and we're slowly starting to break away from that, but that pressure is still there for a lot of people. And there's still, again, when it comes to the male tendencies of not wanting to admit that you're wrong, that you just want to be able to figure it out on your own, that you're afraid to ever get help. And that is such a wrong way of learning.
It's too forced these days. So we have like the whole DeSantis thing with the don't say gay law and all that kind of stuff. And I think DeSantis is a fucking moron. But there's a lot of stuff I think he's right on, where he's like, can our kids just go to the park and play, please? Because in 20 years, they're going to inherit a world of shit. Let's let them be kids, but also give them a little bit of guidance at the same time. We're not going to just let them be kids. We're going to teach them, here's this thing. Because he did a brilliant thing, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but DeSantis passed a law, I think, last year. And I don't like a lot of the political stuff he does, but I think this law was brilliant. So in order to graduate high school now in Florida, you have to pass a financial class. And it's a program where they teach you what CDs are at banks, how to take out loans, how to read contracts. Like, they teach you how to be financially responsible later in life. And you cannot graduate high school until you pass this class. I think that's actually fucking brilliant.
And I remember taking a class like that in high school, but it was just an elective. I mean, it wasn't like a prerequisite.
It was an elective, and we used to call it life skills and home ec and all this other bullshit.
Yeah.
No, this is a specific course on how to financially make yourself secure. They talk to them about investments, how to see a bad investment. I think it's a great thing, because we live in a world where I'm still in my 40s asking parents for help because the music industry sucks. We're giving now with this financial advice to these children in high school a way they don't have to ask their parents for help anymore, because hopefully they learn something from it and make smart investments. Now, if they don't, hey, they don't, but at least they didn't make smart or bad investments because they weren't taught that. They made a bad investment because they're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, and again, that just goes with like having all the right tools that you need to be able to move forward. And just having something like that, I think that should be taught nationwide, where you have to go through a class like that in your high school years to be able to live like that, because not everything is going to be physics, not everything is going to be a calculus. It's just like sometimes it is just like being able to have like a balanced budget. Sometimes it is being able to have investments. There's so many things that can go into it that you can either better or worsen yourself for it. But if you have those tools that you can learn from, that could help so many people in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a hammer, right? Like my dad taught me how to use a hammer when I was a kid. Here's how you put a nail in the wall, and here's how you take a nail out. I mean, it's pretty much common sense of what a hammer is for, but the reason that I know how to use a hammer is because my dad taught me. And when I go to a party and I'm trying to open a beer, I'm using something to open the beer. I'm not asking for a hammer, because you have some of these little morons now that are like, oh, I'm going to open this beer, give me a hammer. That's not what a hammer is for, man. Did your dad not teach you anything?
That's right. You use the countertop just like your dad did.
Yeah, or your knee or whatever other parlor tricks, but you do, like, no joke, you literally have these kids that are just, they're 24 years old, and they're like, I'm going to open this beer with a hammer. Now, if you're trying to impress your friends and do some trick, yeah, whatever. But you have people that don't even know what a fucking hammer is for. Well, first of all, it's in the name. You know what the word hammer means, It's something. I think a lot of it, too, I don't get in arguments. I get in very nice. Dude, I love all of my friends because we never get in arguments. We just get in discussions. And I'm like, man, one of the biggest things is I think what I struggle with monetarily in trying to get jobs is I spend so much time not working. I spend so much time with my kids because I think that's so important. Now, you have lazy parents that don't want to do a fucking thing for their kids and they just want to watch their Netflix and play, the latest Call of Duty, whatever. Yeah, they suck. You also have parents that don't have the time and opportunity because they're working 14 hours a day to afford their kids. They're a completely different breed and scenario. But I do have friends, I love them to death, but they have great jobs, and they sit home playing games all day and don't spend any time with their kids. And it's like, okay, well, when your kid gets older and, without losing my couth, rapes somebody, I'm going to say maybe that's your fucking fault. Now, there are the people that are just mentally fucked up, and no matter what you do as a parent, they're going to just be evil. But for the majority, I know friends of mine, I'm like, dude, your kid's going to grow up, and I'm going to worry about your son because I'm worried that he's going to steal my car. Like, pay attention to him, man. It's not that hard.
It's not. Like, I mean, there obviously being a parent can be hard, but, that's also comes with the job, just like trying to teach them to do the right things so they can go and leave the nest at some point and be able to live their lives and live it in a meaningful way and not behind bars or not end up dead because of terrible decisions they make.
Well, it's also owning up to certain fallacies and mistakes that you make. It's a lot. Trust me, dude. It's a lot easier said than done. But if you have a child with somebody, and so my son, my 14-year-old, for example, we used a condom. She was on birth control, and we also thought that she was infertile because of a thyroid condition that she had. Yet he still came around, It's like, for some reason, that goalie was sleeping. And so he was there. We did not want him at the time. It was a shock to us. So we did want a child. We said, we're going to plan this for 2-3 years from now later. We're going to do it the right way. It came early, even with all the precautions that we did, because sometimes they don't work. And then when it happened, we didn't give up. We dedicated our lives to that. And I know some people that they can't do that. They can't put themselves in that mentality. And hey, man, that's fine if that's the way you are, but that's not me. Because I wasn't going to let my kid grow up that way. So I quit Darkest Hour. I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to take care of this kid. And I want to see his first steps. I want to be part of the life. And so I did. Now, everybody's different. That doesn't mean everybody has to do that. Some people might say, well, financially, I can't do that, which I couldn't either, but I got a job. Every person is different, but you cannot use the child as your crutch, because I see it all over the world where people use their child for their agenda, and that is completely wrong, man.
It is so true. I mean, sadly, I grew up in a situation exactly what you just said, and, it's like I'm able to look back on it now and just see how fucked up everything completely was, and it's just like when you do that to people, you do damage them, whether you're intentionally trying to hurt someone or not. You are damaging everybody involved.
Yeah, you're damaging everybody involved, not just the one person, because there are repercussions, almost, like little waves, that what happened to you, that repercussion goes on to your friends, your girlfriend, the other people involved.
Absolutely. And
that sucks for people, but I think there's a lot of good people in this world that do see that they would never do that intentionally, but because of let's say the housing market, job market, whatever, even though they know they never really want to do that to somebody, they kind of have to, because that's how they survive. We are such in this like cutthroat thing. Like, dude, I live in a small fucking apartment, and when I moved into it, it didn't cost me nothing. It was cheap, but I've stayed in the same place, but now my rent has doubled from when I moved into it, because these corporations don't mind fucking you over. Mm-hmm. They don't give a shit. And so we live in this world now where it's like, you know what? They don't care about me, so we kind of invert it. So instead of me saying, I don't care about the company, I say, I don't care about anybody. So you get fucked over once, so now it's fuck everybody,
Yeah.
And I do see that permeating itself into the world, because traveling a couple years ago, Swiss people were like, well, we live in Switzerland, we have a good economy, we have this, and you can take your American bullshit and shove it up your ass because we're not like that. Now I go to Switzerland and they're doing the same behaviors. And it's like, yeah, it's not only corona that's infectious, behaviors are infectious too.
Absolutely.
And the thing is there's no means to an end with it, and I think that's why it's always going to keep going the same, is because we realize that there is no fix, so we just allow it. It's kind of like if your 14-year-old kid is a very big hypothetical, robs 7-Eleven, or not robs, just not even robs because that's too extreme, steals a candy bar from 7-Eleven. You let it go because you're like, well, he's just going to do it anyway. That doesn't happen with me. If I found out that my son stole a candy bar from 7-Eleven, I am going to do what my parents did. I am going to march his ass back into 7-Eleven and make him apologize and return the damn thing.
Yes.
Because that's what stops the cycle. But I think we're okay with the cycle, Everybody's okay with the way the world is. No. The reason that the world is the way it is because you're okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the world is supposed to be something that's supposed to change for the better. You're never supposed to be complacent with it, and I really do think that is just what's happened for so long, and we're just seeing more severe degrees of that as of late.
Oh, dude, I never thought, like, after touring the world and seeing different cultures, and seeing not just different cultures in the way that they cook food, but the way that they behave with each other, the way they look at education, all that. I thought I had this worldly view on everything, and I never thought that we had these different kind of things in the world. And I never went to Somalia, but for example, Somalia does this, and the Philippines does this, Australia does this. I never thought that it would globally become a thing because of this virus. And it's so funny to talk about the virus because it really unified the world. Basically what the virus did is it made the world unified as everybody's an asshole. It was really weird to be stuck at home after traveling through all these countries and be like, well, now everybody's an asshole. Cool. It's like it gave everybody an excuse to be an asshole. Well, you're being a prick. Oh, COVID. And that's what ended up happening. I deal with it all the time now. I have so many friends in Switzerland. I travel all over there. This guy called Pepe Le Pew. I'll be like, hey, man, Pepe, you're being an asshole. And he's like, COVID. I'm allowed to.
I didn't know that was a get-out-of-jail-free card, but apparently that is the way that it is working now.
I mean, it definitely is. It's like it's an excuse to be a prick. Oh, I'm sick. I got COVID, so I'm allowed to be an asshole. I don't get. Well, I do get, honestly. I get it because people have always, since the beginning and the grace of time, have wanted to be fucking pricks because that's just what we are. But we couldn't just all out be assholes. We had to kind of work together. But now with this whole pandemic and COVID and all this stuff, it's an excuse. Well, I'm allowed to be an asshole because of this. So it gave people an excuse to let their true colors come out, I guess you would say. And I've seen it. Trust me, I've seen it.
Yeah, and just like you mentioned, I just gotta imagine the culture shock that has to come with it. I mean, especially when you think of something that's such an American thing, and then when you go over to Switzerland and you start seeing more and more of this American mentality, and just again, like we've talked about with so much on here, just like the power of influence. There's just it's so easy to sway people if you know how to do it right, and it can take something like a pandemic to be able to throw everyone's vision of the world into disarray and just show everyone's true colors.
Well, because whether they admit it or not, I have a firm belief that everybody wants to belong to something. And you got guys that are like, oh, I'm a loner. I have this mental condition. I have this. I'm a loner. I don't need people. Bullshit. The second that the power of influence comes in and you can be a part of something, you're going to. I mean, there's a reason gangs fucking exist. There's a reason gangs don't even exist just in the general population. There's a reason gangs exist in prison, Everybody wants to belong to something. And what's happened in the last couple of years gave everybody a reason and an excuse to belong to something. Because if you look at kind of like the, let's say, quote unquote, gang mentality, this is just my thoughts, I could be completely wrong, but if you look at the gang mentality, now you're either, left or you're right, or you're either pro-COVID or against science, or you're against it gave everybody a gang to belong to. And that's what people want. I see it with my child. This is his first year in high school. The first day, he hooks up with a clique, whether they're the nerds or they're the metalheads or the jocks or whatever. Everybody wants to belong to that group. And what the, kind of pandemic thing gave us was, now if you had a group that you wanted to belong to, but you never had the credentials to belong to it, now everybody has a group they can belong to, whether you're an anti-vaxxer or you're this or whatever, Now there's a group for everybody. And that's what we want as people. We want to belong to a group. We are a social construct.
Yeah, we truly are, and we do just want to have that acceptance. I mean, you can learn to be by yourself, you can learn to be a loner, but just like you said, you want, and just like we were talking about in the very beginning of this, when we first started talking, just like that cathartic feeling of knowing that someone else can understand the pain that you're going through. You want that in different aspects of your life too. You want to be understood. You want to belong somewhere, and whether it's a positive or negative connotations, for some people that doesn't matter. They just want to feel that acceptance in some way, shape, or form. And there is a clique for everybody nowadays, and it does add to that tribalism that also goes along too, because
exactly. I love that word you just said, tribalism, because for me, I majored in music, but I actually minored in criminal forensics when I was in college. Like, criminology is a huge passion of mine. I loved it. I honestly wish I had reversed them and majored in criminology and minored in music and gotten a real job. But I learned a lot from it. One of my coolest classes was I did blood spatter analysis. And our teacher was John Douglas, this guy from the FBI, one of the old serial killer guys. He was fucking amazing. And very eye-opening class with the way that people are. And so one of the things that we do as cliques is, like, when you look at prison, dude, this was one of the most amazing classes I ever took. Even if I didn't retain too much information, it was great. Because if you look at prison and you watch any kind of prison documentary, obviously they're kind of going to give you a sensationalism. They're not going to, really show like the real truth of what's happening. They're going to sensationalize a little bit. But the truth of the reality is, in prison, from what I know from my class, I could be wrong, but the rapists hang with the rapists, the murderers hang with the murderers, the thieves hang with the thieves. They find their clique because that's where they feel comfortable, because they're not judged. Because I don't think that people are searching, myself, in the psychology of things, I don't think people are searching for cliques. I think they're searching for a place that they won't be judged.
Yes.
Because if it was all about just having a clique, then a murderer would hang out with a rapist, because you know what? You both committed horrible crimes. You have something in common, so that would work. But a murderer is going to look at a rapist and judge him, so they won't hang out together because the fear of judgment. We see it in the music industry as well. It's the reason that you have a dude with long hair and tattoos, and he's in a death metal band. And I love David Vincent for doing this, breaking out and saying, I'm doing a fucking country record and I'm doing a country band. Because the majority of death metal guys won't do that, because they're going to be judged and they're going to say, you're not evil anymore. You're not death metal because you did a country record. David Vincent said, fuck you, I'm doing a country record.
I do love that so much. I mean, and that's just such a great example of that, because that is such an extreme to what a lot of people would expect someone that was a part of like one of the most legendary death metal bands ever to go out and do some outlaw country. Like, you would never expect that, but from the artistic standpoint, you gotta love that. But from the tribalist aspect, it's like you gotta just like that guy at a show that stands in the back with his arms crossed, just like giving the shit face, like staring at the band. It's just like you can't accept change. You can't accept that someone wants to do something other than what you want.
Well, we also live in this world where persona is going to allow you to do things. So if you have David Vincent from Morbid Angel that wants to do a country record, people with his, let's say, quote unquote, famous persona and what he did for death metal with Morbid Angel, they're going to say it's okay. and they accept it. So it's almost like this is serial killers. If you have a guy and his name is John Smith and he killed one person, but he raped people, they're going to go, fuck you, we're going to murder you in prison. Now, if you have somebody that, has John Wayne Gacy, anybody else, whatever name, that has a persona and they're famous, they're going to be like, well, you know what, we'll ignore those 2 rapes because you're famous. It's the same thing with David Vincent. I, for example, have nowhere near the clout David Vincent does. If I did a country record, I would be ostracized. But David Vincent gets away with it because of what he did for death metal. And I think it's awesome that he went for it, because a lot of people would be afraid to do that.
And that's one thing I always talk about.
And not to cut you off, but also when he did it, he fucking did it pretty goddamn well.
Oh, that as well. And that's what I was going to say, is like, that's one thing I do I love talking about in interviews is, the idea of being able to spread your musical wings like that and be able to do that, whether it's in your main entity as a band or you want to be able to venture solo or you just want to create something different. I mean, you shouldn't have to just hide behind a facade. You should be able to make the music that you want to. And sometimes you do need to have that clout to show others that it can be okay, because I noticed that there was a lot more metalheads that were able to say that they do like these different kinds of country ever since David Vincent went out and did country. So, sometimes you need someone like that to show that it is okay to do that, whether it's rebelling against the idea or it's just showing your musical expression.
Well, and I firmly believe, like, we have this kind of thing of, like, metalheads are elitist and all that kind of stuff. I firmly believe, like, 95% of them are not. And it's one of those, like, adages of you can't let a few bad apples ruin the bunch. Just because 3 people are pissed off that David Vincent did a fucking country record doesn't mean all metalheads are fucking bad, because the majority of them love it. But the way we live in a clickbait sensational world too is also the 95% of the people that really support David in this stuff and they love his music, they're not the ones getting the attention. It's the ones that post the bad shit about him. They get the attention. So it seems like everybody is against him. No. You're going to sensationalize in your articles the 2 people that call him a fucking faggot or something,
Because that's what sells.
Exactly. It's the whole clickbait thing. I mean, how many times do you see... I have this news article called Smart News, and I read it every morning. I wake up, and right before I take my kid to school, I read the Smart News because I want to see what's going on in the world and all that. And it used to be a really good app where it kind of, like, pulls everything from all news sources all over the world, and you can kind of tell it which things you're interested in, and then the algorithm, shows you the news articles. And it was great. I'd wake up and I'd read something in Somalia, I'd read something in the Philippines, whatever, what was going on. Now, I load up the app and I get my coffee, and I'm like, okay, I got to take my kid to school, and the first thing is, we have found out that COVID is bad for people. Read to the end of the article to find out why. Like, just put it in the fucking headline. They don't even have to read the article, No, you want me to read because you want the clicks and you want the advertising, because the way advertising works is if I read a third of your article, you don't get the full money of me reading the whole article. So we've learned how to do this. I always said, here's the funny thing about music being devalued and all that kind of stuff. So we live in a world where music is so devalued that you go and you get a Hulu subscription, right? Mm-hmm. And here's a show you want to watch so bad, and then, 15 minutes into it, now you get an hour, or a minute and 30 commercial break. And you deal with it. First of all, you're paying for this service, and you're getting a minute and 30-second commercial break. Can you imagine that every time you bought a CD, a minute and 30 seconds into it, there was a commercial on the fucking song? So why can't musicians do that? It's the same shit. It's because music has been so devalued that if I was to put a commercial in one of my songs, people would go, what a fucking money-hungry asshole. Oh, by the way, let's stop listening to the song because I got to go watch an advertisement on Hulu. Like, it's okay it's the whole thing of it's okay for everybody else, but not for me. It's bullshit.
It is bullshit.
Because we devalued music, and I firmly believe, too, one of the reasons music has been devalued is because you have, let's say, quote-unquote, artists. You have musicians, you have composers. First of all, I'm a musician, I'm a guitar player. I'm not a composer. I'm not fucking Hans Zimmer, I'm a guitarist. And you have a guy, not to throw him under the bus, Nile, like Carl from Nile. And this is a hypothetical, so this did not happen. But you have a guy from Carl who's in Nile that writes a death metal song and going, "Ugh, I don't believe this because I'm an artist." No, you're fucking not. You played a bunch of power chords at 240 beats per minute. You're not fucking artists. Stop thinking you're more important than you are. You get these death metal guys, "Oh, I'm an artist. I'm an artiste." No, you're not. My son's 14 years old, never played guitar. I'm sure if I showed him how to play a power chord, he could write the exact same fucking song you did. Bum, 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 bum. Cool. Great. You're not a fucking artiste. But everybody wants to be more important than they are, you know? You're not Monet. You're Carl from Nile.
It's such an accurate description, too.
And if that was recorded, please, Carl, I don't mean you. I love you to death. You were my example.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you could have thrown any musician with any kind of popularity behind them, and you could say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any death metal band. Cannibal Corpse. So James Murphy from Death Obituary, he's one of my greatest friends. We talk weekly. What I love about him is he understands that. And he's like, "Hey, man, I was lucky. I joined Obituary at the right time. I joined Death at the right time." He's like, "I didn't do anything except write a couple riffs and have power chords that people loved." He's like, "I'm nothing better than any of these other artists. I just hit at the right time." And I'm like, "James, well, the difference is your riffs actually were pretty fucking cool and memorable." And I'm like, "James, I love you to death, man. You're one of my best friends. But if you wrote, Low Life on the Death record now, people would go, what is this piece of shit?" The timing is just as important as the riff itself.
Yes.
Like Darkest Hour, I'm not a huge famous guitar player. If I came out now with Convalescence or any of the Darkest Hour songs, people would go, what is this amateur bullshit? But back in 2004, it wasn't done yet, so it had an impact. Timing is just as important as the riff.
And I probably wouldn't have even discovered Darkest Hour or even be having this conversation with you if it wasn't for those songs hitting at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, same with As I Lay Dying. I love Nick. I love all the As I Lay Dying guys, man. They're some of my best friends. I love them to death. I would jump in front of a bus for them. But if As I Lay Dying had never put out any records and started today, I'd be like, what is this boring shit? Because we've evolved. Now we don't have As I Lay Dying. Now we have Polyphia. And if you compare Polyphia to As I Lay Dying, As I Lay Dying are probably some of the worst musicians in the world because the guys in Polyphia are fucking phenomenal. It's about timing. Because Tim from Polyphia, I think he's probably one of the most amazing guitarists I've ever heard in my life. I don't like their music. I think it's boring. But that's why timing works. Because if Polyphia came out in 2004, they wouldn't be anybody because people go, what is this arrogant prog bullshit?
It's just
like, hey, cool neck tattoo, buddy. Nobody cares about your music. But with As I Lay Dying, it wasn't about just your neck tattoo. You had to have a cool neck tattoo, but you had to have a cool song.
Yes.
So timing and the zeitgeist of everything is just as important as the band itself. I mean, Pantera, one of my favorite bands of all time. Now, we have this whole reunion. Well, not reunion, but whatever you want to call what they're doing now with Zach and Charlie and everything else. I think it's brilliant. I think it's great. But do you think if Pantera just came out tomorrow and nobody had ever heard Cowboys from Hell, it would go anywhere? Fuck no, it wouldn't. People would probably dog it and be like, that guitar tone sucks. It's the mentality of the time is just as important. Look at Ozzy, dude. I was gracious enough in 2004 to do Ozfest with Black Sabbath with their original lineup and got to watch them every night. And it was a dream come true. A little 20-year-old on tour watching Black Sabbath every night. It was just fucking unreal to be a part of that. But if Black Sabbath never came out in the 70s and came out tomorrow, the majority of people would go, oh my God, Tommy Iommi, what a horrible guitar player.
It's just so crazy to think about.
It's the time,
It really is.
They came out at such a time where things were new and they were so inventive and creative that they had a career out of it. But I normally say 99%, but I want to say almost 100%. I fully believe if Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, all those bands, they came out tomorrow, they wouldn't be shit. Even Queen, dude. I will go enough and say if Queen came out as in my eyes, Freddie Mercury was the best vocalist that ever lived. Having to record records and edit people and put their pitch and timing and use software to make them sound good, I will go down and say Freddie Mercury is probably the best vocalist, hands down, of all time. If he came out tomorrow, people would go, oh, I don't think he's that good. That's just the mentality of people. I mean, there's a reason there's a fucking statue in, Switzerland of the guy.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody wants to. I think people like talking shit more than they like praising.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big thing I do with my kid too. Is like, I'm not gonna praise him because he got an A on a fucking math exam. Well, first of all, you're supposed to. But if he does something really cool for me, like take the trash out. Hey, Dad, just to help you out, your back hurts. I'm gonna take the trash out. I'm gonna praise him for it because I think that's just as important. But we live in a world too now where it's cooler to knock you down than praise you.
And I know for myself personally, I try to fight that so much. And when I think of what I do with like interviews and the show that I do and everything, it's like I don't want to just talk shit. I want to be able to show off good things that are out there. I mean, yeah, of course you can't ignore that there's other things going on in the world. I mean, it'd be nice to live in a world like that, and some people have that, of course. But it's just like when you can look at like real positive things that give you enjoyment, things that put a smile on your face, and you're able to recognize that more than what gives you that sourpuss look on your face every day, the things that are just pissing you off and you just want to explode. I mean, I'd rather try to bring something more positive into it than negative, because there is so much negative that you can feed through the machine already.
Well, and I think that it's okay every once in a while to, get into your shell and be a little negative, because when it comes back to mental health and all the other stuff too, sometimes it is very beneficial and helpful to some of us to just go into mode and be a dick. It does make us feel better, and it makes our Tuesday better than our Monday,
It's true.
So it's okay. As long as you realize what you're doing, then that's okay, man. Everybody has their bad moments. Everybody's allowed their dickish moments. Nothing wrong with it. Just make sure that when you are like in your dickish moments, that you realize that you're being a dick because you're just being a dick and you're not actually attacking somebody. Then it's okay. It's like if I go to the store tomorrow to 7-Eleven and get my energy drink in the morning before I take my kid to school, and I'm just in a fucking bad mood, and I'm going to be a prick and I'm going to be a dick because I'm in a bad mood. If I slam my key on my car seat, great. That's my out. I'm being a dick. I'm in a bad mood. No problem. I slam my key on my car seat. If I walk into 7-Eleven and I look at a guy and I'm like, your fucking shirt sucks, you fucking prick, well, now I'm a dick. Like, that's not called for.
Yeah.
It's okay to be a dick to yourself. Sometimes that breeds growth.
It's true. And yeah, I mean, there is healthier ways to be able to get that aggression out, and sometimes it is just like throwing your keys on a car seat or whatever the case is. I mean, it's good to get that aggression out so it doesn't just build up inside of you and it explodes in one day for something that you're gonna regret for the rest of your life.
And we can't always live our lives being happy 100%. If you introduce me to somebody that's happy 100%, I don't want to fucking meet that person.
I feel like there's some skeletons in the closet if they're just happy 100% of the time.
Yeah, they're just pacifying everything else, and they're lying to you.
Yeah.
Because anybody that says, "Oh, I'm fine. I have no problems. I'm always happy." Yeah, right, liar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Well, you say I don't have skeletons in the closet. Okay, well that's because they haven't become skeletons yet. You have bodies in the closet.
Oh, so true.
All right, well, anyways, when it comes to the interview, is there any kind of like musical stuff you wanted to talk about? Sorry to talk your ear off, man.
No, not at all. This has actually been a real highlight, just being able to like shoot the shit like this. I love having conversation like this, but I
think that's important, man. I did this thing a long time ago, which you would never have heard about. So do you remember SMN News?
Oh, yes.
Website from a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So Aiden, who used to run that, he used to work for Yahoo. I proposed to him a long, long time ago this thing I wanted to do. It was called Artist on Artist. And he was like, that's kind of a gay title. And I was like, that's the whole point. So I said, what I want to do is I don't want somebody to interview people. I want an artist to interview another artist, and I want no holds barred, where we can be like, hey man, you ever played St. Andrews in Detroit? What a fucking shithole, you know? And we can talk about that. So we did a test proposal for Yahoo. Yahoo was going to be the investor on it. They were going to, it was going to be all video. It was way before podcasts. So let's see, before my son was born. So we're talking 17 years ago. And I said, I really want to do this. And I think it'd be kind of a really cool thing, like way before podcasts and all that. And Aiden said, yeah, let's do this. So let's do a test. Let's have an artist on artist where everything is just out in the open. Obviously, we're going to edit things, and, you know, if somebody says something that shouldn't be put out there that's going to ruin the career, we'll edit that out and everything. I was like, okay, cool. So the first test we did was me and Andrew WK.
A very good start.
So I called Andrew WK, and the initial, start of the conversation was, I was like, yeah, man, you know, obviously you do this party music and everything, but you're a metal fan. We talked about that. But then about 20 minutes into it, the conversation completely flip-flopped. And we ended up talking about books that we like and self-help books, movies that we like, and why Andrew likes this movie, why he doesn't, all this stuff. There was no music involved. It was just two dudes bullshitting, you know? And I sent it to Aiden, and he was like, dude, this format is brilliant. It's not, what do you think about music? What do you think about this band? He's like, we're getting to see Andrew WK's personality because you pulled it out of him by asking when he said, I really like this movie. And I said, well, why? What resonated with you in that movie? Was there something from your childhood? Whatever, you know? And he said it was an honest, open discussion. I love that. So we did the whole thing, me and Andrew WK. We put it up to Yahoo. We did a list. They were completely interested. And then out of nowhere, they just said, we don't think we can do this. They said because it was too open and honest. And you got to remember, too, this was also 17 years ago.
Oh, of course. The
reason they never went forward with it, because there wasn't enough drama. They wanted me to be like, hey, you worked with Municipal Waste recently. Tell me a bad story that happened in the studio. You know, that's what they wanted. Oh. And so the whole program kind of thing got kiboshed. And Aiden was like, dude, this is a brilliant format. Unfortunately, they're not going to, you know, put their money into it. And he said, I'm contracted with Yahoo and SMN, so it would have to be through them, and they don't want to do it, so we can't do it. So I still have the interview that I did with me and Andrew WK, and I listen to it all the time. And I thought it was such a brilliant format because it's like what you and I are doing. We were just shooting the shit and just fucking talking. And you got to see the quote-unquote the artist for a human, but you also got to see the interviewer as a human. He wasn't just reading from a list of fucking questions that everybody wants to hear. It was honest discussion. So there was no format. I didn't have a list of things to ask him. That's why it had to be edited. There was a fucking shit ton of downtime. I was like, okay, what am I going to ask Andrew now? All right, give me a minute, you know? But it was true. And I think that we lose that. I love Doc and what he does with his podcast because there's no format for it. And that's what I like about the way you do your stuff, too, is obviously you have some, you know, preconceived notions about what you're going to ask because you interview bands that people want to know certain questions about and stuff like that.
And you want to promote the new release that they're going to be having out.
Exactly, but you also format it as a discussion instead of a question and answer format.
Yes.
Because that gets so fucking boring. You know, if it's a Q&A, just fucking put the text out and let me read it. I don't need to listen to it.
Exactly, and, you know, it took me a long time to get there. I mean, I remember 11 years ago, it was so hard for me to even talk to people that I knew personally because of all the childhood bullshit that I went through where I was always told, speak when spoken to and then never express yourself. And then finally I was like, oh, here, interview Decapitated, interview Kitty, interview Devin Townsend, do all these things that you never thought you were going to do. And then I realized, almost immediately that I didn't want to ask, the simple Q&A questions. I wanted to go deeper than that. I don't want to have a list of questions in front of me. I want to be able to see where the conversation goes. I want it to be just 100% 100% stream of consciousness, like have a starting point, have an ending point, because, you know, sometimes, you know, it's like you only get like a half hour or 20 minutes or something like that. So you want to try to edit yourself that way. But I just want it to be like a real conversation that happens. And, you know, one of the most important things that you can do in an interview is a follow-up question to what they're saying, not just waiting to answer the next question and not paying attention to who you're talking to and just completely ignoring them. You know, just have that discussion like you were talking about. Like, you know, it's like, why did this movie affect you? What do you like about this band? What do you like about this part of life? I mean, there's so many things that can come from with that, and that's just having like a general discussion, like actually caring about who you're talking about. And I'm always going to be that kind of person that wants to have something like that. And I know it's not clickbait worthy. I know there's no dirty laundry that really comes out of it, but I love doing that so much more, having those real genuine conversations, because that's what means to me more.
I love your openness about you talking about your own struggles and stuff like that too, because for me that's important, because you're not just an interviewer at that point, and you're kind of opening yourself up and letting people know that, hey man, my blood's the same as yours. And I think that's really cool, because you're one of the only people that openly, as an interviewer, talks about your own struggles. And I think that's important too, because part of the interviews too is, yeah, you want to interview the bands and the artists and the musicians and all that, but nobody, I don't know if you remember, but I loved Ricky Rockman from the old MTV days.
Oh yes.
Because he also talked about his own stuff. So it wasn't just an interview, it was a discussion.
Yes.
And I thought that was so cool and important. And you do that, which I think is cool, man. Like, you actually engage yourself in something with the artist, because, hell, dude, maybe one day somebody's going to say something, you're going to be like, holy fuck, my mentality has changed. And I think that's really great that you do that. I wish it would get bigger and better for you, and people would realize that you're not just an interviewer, that you're what's the person? You're like, yeah, you know, the old Ricky Rockman, you know, you're actually trying to find things out about the bands and the mentality, and have a discussion with them and open up the ideas of, this doesn't just have to be about, what did you think when you wrote that riff? Because nobody fucking gives a shit. Like, hey, Kris, Convalescence is the biggest, darkest hour song that you ever did. What were you thinking when you wrote that? Well, actually, I was sitting on the toilet taking a shit. How interesting, you know?
What was the consistency of that shit? Was
yeah, exactly. Like, and that's what other interviewers do. You say that. Oh, I was taking a shit when I wrote that riff. What did you eat the night before?
How much toilet paper did get used? Was it quarter of a roll? Was it just a...
But you ask guys the different follow-ups that matter. That's why I love listening to interviews, because you really find out. One thing we want to do with quote-unquote the artist, you know, it's like, you want to find out who they are as humans, because then you connect more with their music and stuff, you know? That's just how we are as people. And you actually ask those really good questions. You're not just asking because it's going to give you a view count. You're asking because you're genuine. And I love that about you, that you have the genuinicity, if that's even a word, in the interview. And I think that's great, man. Not a lot of people have the balls to even do that. They just want to ask the basic bullshit to get the clicks.
Yeah, and
you don't care about the clicks. You care about the content.
Absolutely. And that's why up until this month, so much of my stuff was just audio, because I wanted it to be something that people could listen to, that you didn't have to worry about my face. You had to hear the content that was actually being said. I still care so much about that. And that's why I still do my weekly podcast, because I love just getting the general content out there. And I know it's a visual world out there, and a lot of people want to be able to see that, but you know, it's just like, I care about the conversation. I care about what's being told, and of course hitting some of the focal points, but you know, it's just like, if I went into this whole thing talking about, you know, it's like, what was Devin Townsend's thought when you first were working on Convalescence? Like, you've already talked about that. You've already talked about all of these different things. I would rather hear all of these things about like what you're doing now. Like knowing that you are going over, like you are going to Switzerland is just so great, that you're able to work with all these different bands over there. And I love the fact that you're still a part of music.
Story, man, and you'll probably laugh your ass off as an interviewer. So I could be wrong, but I believe we were in Belgium playing a show. And so the backstage was underneath the building, and it was kind of this like little bomb shelter thing. And we're all sitting there, and tour manager comes up, and he's like, all right, well, we got to do an interview for this thing. And he goes, does anybody want to do the interview? And then, you pass it off and everything. So it ended up being me and Ryan, the drummer, doing the interview. We're like, yeah, we'll do it, whatever. So dude comes down to this little fucking bomb shelter thing in Belgium or wherever we're at. And he comes down, and the first thing he says is, he goes, okay, guys, so tell me a little bit about a history of the band. So I kind of get this look on my face. I'm like, and Ryan is so pissed off at this point because he'd had a bad day. We're humans. Mm-hmm. Ryan literally looks at the guy and he goes, you didn't do your fucking homework? Literally? Seriously? You're going to ask me the history of the band? Google, Wikipedia, anything else? He's like, I'm done with this. And he got up and left.
Oh, shit.
He literally got up and left. He's like, I'm not doing this. Now, he might have handled it a little bit more graciously, but I gotta decide with him, like, dude, that's your first question as a journalist is tell me about the history of the band? Google, man. Google. Fucking Google. First of all, now I need to call the label, and I gotta call the label and talk to the tour manager and say, did you not send them the bio on the one sheet? Because that's all the information on the one sheet. They shouldn't be asking me the history of the band.
Yeah.
Like, how many times is that out there? Don't repeat the same bullshit. So to me, what I thought was, that's not a journalist. That's somebody who wanted to get into the show for free.
Yes.
And called Victory and said, I'm a journalist and I work for this magazine. Can you put me on the guest list? That's all it was for me.
Whereas for me, like, I mean, there's so many things that can happen when you're doing in-person interviews like that, like before or after a show, whatever the case is. And I've had so many times where, the bands or the artists couldn't do it or didn't want to do it, whatever the case is. I mean, it's been years now, but I couldn't imagine, like, going to a show, going to talk to someone, take up a part of their time, and just show that I know absolutely nothing about them. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of my time. And I can't blame Ryan for doing that. Like, for me, I would, even if I barely knew someone about
an interview that you can watch on YouTube of me and Ryan. So we did this interview in Chicago, and this, like, I don't know if it was radio or whatever, but they used to run a contest, and you could go to the show and you could win the contest, and to win the contest you got on the show for free and you got all this shit, but you had to interview the band. And so this girl comes up, and it's on YouTube. She interviews me and Ryan. She doesn't know a fucking thing about interviewing. She doesn't know a thing about the band. Basically, she just won some kind of contest, and her friend took her to the show, and she asked us to. So tell me a little bit about the history of the band, and me and Ryan go, oh, here we go. But we can't be mean to her because of the situation. Right. So we went ahead and, Ryan's the one that took the actual answer. And he talks a little bit about the history of the band, because that's not the girl's fault. She's not a journalist. She won some contest. She doesn't know shit about the band. She's not there for Darkest Hour. She was there for As I Lay Dying or whoever we're playing with,
Right.
She doesn't know shit about us. So we're not going to be mean to her. But a journalist who that's their job description, fuck you, man.
Yes.
Really?
And, for every single interview that I do, whether it's a band that I grew up listening to or they're putting out their debut album, I want to listen to the album. I want to read the biography. I want to be able to dissect the songs. I want to know everything that's going on, and anything that I don't know, that's what I want to ask questions about. Like sometimes it has to do with like the artwork. Sometimes it has to do with gear, or sometimes it has to do with real life situations, whatever the situation goes for. But if you don't even do the basic essentials of knowing who the fuck you're interviewing, that just blows my mind.
I don't think you have to. Like, you might, let's say you don't know a fucking thing about my career and what I've done. That's okay. Don't ask me questions about my career when you don't know.
Yes.
It's okay to have just a regular conversation. It's kind of like, don't front on something you don't know, Like, I know Devin Townsend like the back of my fucking hand. If I was an interviewer, I have so many questions for him because I know his past history and everything he's done. Now, if you were to ask me to interview some other Swedish musician who I've never met, well, it's going to be a different scenario.
Yeah.
And I like that about you, because you do your research, but if it's somebody that you're not really like too familiar with, you ask the question as a quote-unquote newbie. You ask the questions that the newbies would want to know. You want to inform people that, hey, I don't know about this band, and if you don't know about this band, here's how we're going to learn about them. And I think that's brilliant.
And it just comes from the authenticity of what I'm looking for. And I'm glad there are people that do appreciate that, and seriously, like I can feel it pulling on my heartstrings right now just hearing you say that, because
Well,
I mean
what I want to
it
do
means a
for you
lot to hear you
also
say
as
that.
well is, Doc from God forbid, from Bad Wolves.
Yeah.
He's got his podcast. Dude, he makes a fuck ton of money off of it. He's got Jabberjaw Media and all these other sponsors and everything that go into it. I want to get that for you because I genuinely believe I like, out of everything, probably your stuff that you do more than anybody else because it's so genuine. I want to be able to use my contacts and my connections to get you into that. So I want to put you in touch with some people like with Jabberjaw Media and stuff like that to try and build what you do with like your podcast stuff, if you would allow me.
I got to be honest, I'm kind of holding back some tears right now hearing you say it. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because I don't know you from Adam, man. We're not best friends. I don't, go have dinner with you. But I like truth in media, and I think that you do a really good job with it. So I want to push you a little bit bigger, too, because I also, I pay attention to your stuff because I like you as a friend. I see the struggles and stuff that you go through. And if there's anything I can do to make that better for you, I think it would be something I would want to do for you. Because we're very similar in our mentalities,
And yeah, I mean, over the course of just us being able to go back and forth like that, I mean, there's so many similarities. I mean, obviously differences, we're human, but there's so many similarities to the way that we say and think and do things, and obviously different things, but yeah, and it just, I'm kind of choking up a little bit on my words. Seriously, that means everything to me. Thank you.
Let me get in touch with some people and see what I can do for you, because I think we could take you to, not something huge, but maybe next level at least for you. And I'd love to do that because I do love your podcast. I listen to them all the time and all the recordings you do, and I love the way that you approach with bands, because you're very brutal and honest the way you question them, but without being dickish, and I love that.
Yeah, and it just comes from like a human nature, and like we talked about it so much, like being humans, we're so inquisitive. It's like I mean, obviously a lot of people want to be stagnant nowadays, but there's many of us that still want to be able to learn. We want to be able to discover what makes people tick, and for someone like me, that comes with the music that I enjoy listening to and being able to help promote, whether it's a huge band, whether it's a smaller band. I want to be able to learn about these things and be able to pull it up.
Kind of about your stuff and listening to it is you can tell that you're I mean, I guess you can tell when you're a fan of the band that you're talking to, or it's new to you and you might not be a fan. You can tell the difference.
Yeah.
But both times is very genuine.
Yeah, and for me, like when I'm doing an interview, like I want to be able to give like a proper interview. Like if I have nothing I can add to the conversation, I sometimes decline, or I can't do the interview because I feel like I can't really add anything. Like I can't.
Like Isotope RX software gets rid of it in 2 seconds, man.
That's incredible. I mean, I should know that stuff is already out there, but just knowing that it's out there, like specifically for things like that, is just fucking awesome.
Well, it is out there, but there's a key thing too, and I deal with this all the time. I'm dealing with this band in Switzerland called Circle of Execution. So I produced their first record, right?
Yeah.
And I was up to produce their second record. So the guitarist, he bought a Neural DSP plugin for reamping guitars. And they said, no, we're not going to have you produce the record because I bought this software, so now we can do it ourselves. That's not the way it works, man.
That's not
the way it works. Just by putting your credit card info in doesn't mean you know how to fucking use it, dude.
No.
But they literally are recording themselves now because he bought a piece of software and he thinks he's going to make their record sound better than I could. Hey, I might not be the best, but I'll tell you what, I've worked in that software for 15 years now. I guarantee you I can do a fucking better job than you can.
And with the level of talent that you've been able to work with as well, too. I mean, you're able to like constantly learn from other people. You're able to learn from the situations that happen, like if things shit the bed or updates and stuff like that. I treat
myself like a sponge. One of my favorite things is in 2002, when we went to Sweden to record with Fredrik Nordstrom. We were in, there's 3 studios there, Studio A, B, and C. In Flames was in Studio C doing an EP, and Soilwork was in Studio B, and we were in Studio A. And Studio A is the big one. So all these guys are like, who the fuck is this American band in the big studio? They must have money, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we got to meet all the guys, and they were awesome. So I got to meet Peter Witchers the first time I met him, and I was kind of fanboying, and, you know, literally if he had said suck my dick, I would have, you know. I was just in this, like, ingracious mode with him. And I had not touched recording software in my life, dude. I didn't know a fucking thing about it. Like, all I knew was spacebar is a spacebar. So the way Frederick works, especially with the way Swedish Laws are, they work in the studio 9 to 5. After 5 p.m., they go home. That's it. You're done. But we're paying for, like, the full day. So what happens over in Sweden, well, where the old Frederick Nordstrom at Studio Fredman was, after 5 o'clock, he leaves. You can stay there at the studio and do whatever you want. He's just not there. So he doesn't want you doing any production on any of your material because he's not there. But when he leaves at 5, if you need to re-record a guitar part, practice it, get it better, he's okay with that, you know? Just re-record something, get it better. Dude, I didn't know a fucking thing about recording, so I went up to Peter Witchers, and I was like, man, we're stuck here all night because we're staying in the studio. I want to redo this guitar part. I don't think I did it very well, but I don't know shit. And he's like, I will teach you Pro Tools. So I spent those almost 2 months with Peter Witcher from Soilworks showing me how to work Pro Tools. So I learned from the fucking master, right? And the coolest part about it was he wasn't some asshole that was like, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to waste my time. He spent every night showing me how Pro Tools work. So not only did I learn the software and how to use it, but I learned from the best, man. And that was one of the most coolest experiences I'll ever have, is sitting in Studio Fredman in Sweden at 20 years old with Peter from Soilwork, who's an idol of mine at the time, showing me, no, you want to press this button because this does this. It was just fucking brilliant, man. It was amazing. So I know the opportunities I was given, you know. I'm very gracious for it. And I still talk to Peter all the time. He was just such a gracious dude. You meet these amazing bands like that, and yeah, there's going to be a bunch of fucking assholes. There's going to be a bunch of fucking pricks. Peter's not one of them.
I never got that impression that he would be.
Oh, no, dude, he was so cool, and I always tell people, like, I worked with him, and then I worked with James Murphy, you know, the Obituary guy and Death guy. I worked with him at his studio. He taught me drum editing. So I had the opportunity to learn from these guys that were not only on, you know, level 10 of their craft, so I got to learn from the best, but they were willing when I would say, like, hey, Peter, hey, James, I'm getting this wrong. I don't understand it. They would spend the time with me to show me why I was getting it wrong and how to make it better. So I learned not only from the best in terms of their quality and caliber, but I also learned from the best in terms of their personalities. They were willing to work with me and show me. And I was very gracious for that. And so it's awesome, the ability and the skills I have. They don't come from me being amazing. They come from me having proper instruction.
And when you can get people who know their craft so well and being able to learn other things as well, too. I mean, obviously, like when you first hear James Murphy, you don't necessarily think drum editing. But the fact that he does know drum editing and he was able to teach you so much is such a cool thing. And, you know, like with Peter.
I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
So if Jeff Loomis ever hears this, he'll probably laugh. Jeff Loomis is one of my idols, right? Yeah. I love Jeff Loomis. So we played in D.C. and they were playing in Northern Virginia. So I got put on the guest list. So we played. I left the second we were done. Like, you know, show is over, hand the guitar to the guitar tech, boom, I'm out of here. Went down to the Nevermore show. And a huge Jeff Loomis fan. So I got to meet him and we got to hang out and drink some beers and have some fun, right? And so I'm talking to him like, hey, man, you know, by the way, in this band, he's like, oh, I know who you guys are. So I said, by the way, I have an instructional DVD that I sell. I want to give it to you. If you're going to just put it in the trash or on the bus and don't give a fuck about it, please tell me. I don't care. It's not going to hurt my feelings, but I'm not going to give it to you because I'm going to save it to sell to somebody else. He's like, no, let me check it out. So I was married at the time, and we lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, and it was during the winter. Huge snowstorm, so we're stuck. We can't go anywhere. So we're sitting in the house, and I get a phone call, and I look at my phone, and it says Jeff Loomis. And I was like, what? This is awesome, first of all, you know? So I look at my wife and I'm like, I'm going outside to take this fucking call. So I go outside and Jeff's like, hey man, I wanted to call you and tell you. And he goes, I know my skills, I know my theory, I know all this stuff. I'm a great guitar player. He didn't say it in like a arrogant way,
Right.
I was like, yeah. And he goes, but I was watching your video and you were talking about something with the A minor scale and the way you're doing arpeggios. And he goes, I just wanted to call you and tell you I actually learned some theory off your DVD tonight, man. That's awesome. And I was like, you think that's awesome? You don't know what I'm thinking fucking right now. And it was just this awesome moment where one of my guitar idols saw my shitty little instructional DVD I recorded in my house with fucking $10 camera. And he said he learned something from it. And I was like, this is what makes music fucking beautiful. These kind of people. And dude, it made my world. So I went back into the house. I told my wife, and I was like, you have no idea what just happened. I was like, I'm a fucking cloud nine. One of my idols and my influential guitar players just called me to tell me he'd learned something from me. I was like, I'm on fucking cloud nine right now. Like, it's like meeting your idols and they're cool. And I had the best sex of my life that night because I was just like, let's go, Dude, it was fucking unreal to hear that from Jeff. And I still keep in touch with him. I still talk to him all the time. Such a nice, down-to-earth person. Dude, he did not have to call me and tell me that. He was in a much bigger band than me. He wasn't getting anything out of it. It wasn't like all of a sudden we're going to take him on tour because we're a huge fucking band. He had no reason whatsoever to call me and tell me that. He did because he's a great, genuine person that actually learned something. That is what makes the musical world go round, when you have people like that.
Oh,
And I will love him to death forever because of that. It literally made me, like, my wife, she hated that phone call because for like the next 3 weeks, all I did was grab my guitar and practice. Like, okay, well, Jeff said this, now I got to be better.
That just makes me so happy to hear that too, because it's like I love Jeff so much too, and he has contributed to some of my favorite bands and projects, whether it's been like a guest solo or he's been a part of the full band. And he just was like one of the first guitarists I've heard that like made my jaw drop on what you could do on the guitar. And to find out that he really is just that genuine guy, like he could have been an absolute dick and just like learned that from your DVD and never said a word about it and just started incorporating
That's what I mean. He might not have even learned anything, but to make the effort and call me, because we exchanged numbers at the show. And I know that he's of this caliber level. I'm never going to bother him and text him and call him. But we built a bond and a friendship out of that. And, dude, that's just awesome because, honestly, that doesn't exist a lot in this industry.
No, it doesn't. And there's a lot of people who do say that.
Dude, I just texted him 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, man, Jeff, how you doing? I don't really care how he's fucking doing because, honestly, I know he's doing fine. He's an arch enemy. He's making good money. I don't need to ask him how he's doing. It's about keeping in touch with people. And he wrote back and he's like, I'm good. How are you? And that's it. It's this letting somebody know that you're thinking about them. And he knows with me, I'm not texting him because I want something from him. I'm just asking how he is. Because you do get those texts all the time. Hey, man, how's it going? And you're like, oh, I guess they're getting ready to go on tour and they want some help. Jeff doesn't fucking need help from me. He's doing just quite all right by himself,
Absolutely. And again, it's just, I love hearing that. Just, it's the connections. And, it's like I've made so many great connections just because of interviews and just showing my appreciation and being able to ask real questions and stuff like that. Of course, you and I have been talking for years upon years. Sometimes time goes by, but that's life. But the fact that, we've been able to talk for like over 2 hours now. I'm looking at my software and seeing that we've been just like shooting this shit for 2 hours like this. Like, this is such a huge fucking highlight to me as someone who's appreciated the work that you've done. And we're just able to have like a real conversation instead of me being like Chris Farley to Paul McCartney and asking about the Beatles questions and, getting everything wrong. It's just, I love having this real conversation.
I think it's because I honestly do 100% actually respect what you do.
And
you could come at me with questions that are very difficult, very hard to answer because you're at that gut-wrenching journalism, But I know that that's what you're really good at, and I wouldn't care because I actually do respect a lot of what you do. I've liked you for all the years we've known each other and talked because I think you're one of the last true genuine ones. Because for me, you would be the guy that says, okay, you had this problem with this person, you did this. Mm-hmm. Here's my question, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. Or you get a lot of journalists that are like, you must answer.
And
Like, okay, well, no, I don't have to, by the
no,
way.
you don't. I,
But leading to that, what I was leading into is I do want to go to bed with my kid here
oh,
soon.
sure,
So
yeah.
if there is any questions musically and all that stuff that you want to ask, feel free.
Well, I was going to say before, it's just like I know you do have a lot of cool stuff that is going on, like going over to Switzerland and being able to help produce these bands. Like, is there like anything you can talk about, like what's coming up or anything to be able to promote yourself?
In terms of promotion, so what I do in Switzerland is we don't really work with big bands because I'm not at that caliber as a producer. I need to prove myself. So the management company I work with, we work with smaller bands, and our goal is to hire them as the management company and build them, and also I produce them. So we want to really build them and get them better. So most of the guys I work with it doesn't mean that they're bad bands. It doesn't mean that they're terrible musicians. It just means they're not known.
Yeah.
So anything I'm working with right now, nobody's ever going to have heard of it because I work with bands that have never even put out a record. Because I'm also trying to hone my own craft at the same time, you know?
Oh yeah,
So
it works both ways.
I do have one band I'm working with that I keep telling the manager too. I'm like, we're going to find, through our travels and everything else, that there's going to be one band that is just so fucking good, and that's going to put us on the map. And that's going to come out, and people are going to go, like, holy shit, Chris Norris needs to produce our record now. I think we found the one band that's going to do that for us. Fucking amazing, dude. So I'm kind of working behind the scenes and also getting them signed to, like, Nuclear Blast and some other labels. But in terms of, like, production and what I do, I'm not working with anybody that anybody would have known, but I almost prefer that without throwing anybody under the bus, because at that point, like early in their careers, there's no egos, and it's just so easy to fly to Switzerland and work with them.
And that makes all the sense in the world. I mean, it goes both ways. You can learn from them, they can learn from you. You're honing your craft, they're honing their craft. I mean, it's beneficial in everybody's way.
Well, and the cool thing about it is, like, the one band I'm working with right now, their band name is Cinequan, and the cool thing is the guy is phenomenally, probably one of the most amazing musicians I've ever worked with in my life. He does everything. He does all the drums, the guitars, the bass and vocals. He's like a one-man machine. So he has musicians that, play shows with him and everything, because he can't do everything live by himself. But for recording, He does everything. But he's also so young into it that he's learning as I produce with him. So as I'm learning better production skills, this microphone does this software does this, and all that, he's also learning behaviors by asking me questions. And he's just the most brilliant musician to work with. And so I think when the record finally does come out, I just got home from Switzerland, we just did the drums, but now we're getting ready to do the guitars and the vocals. I think when this record comes out, what I'm probably most excited about is that it will actually put my name, quote unquote, a little bit, not huge, but on the map as a producer who knows what the fuck he's doing. But I'm also one of those people that I will say that when this record comes out and everybody says, holy shit, this is fucking amazing, it's not just me. Like, the guy's name is Jan. He did half the work before I even started,
I love hearing that. I love hearing about that talent that is soon to be discovered, and the fact that you can find that and you're able to want to work with people like that and be able to give them the connections they need to be able to reach that next level. And I'm excited. It's just like whenever that happens, I can't wait to hear
when
it.
we get up the phone, text me an email that'll be the best for you, and I'll send you not even our record, just our pre-pro.
Sure.
And you're gonna go, holy fuck, dude! I love this guy so much. The way I met him was I was in the studio producing a record, and he had the idea for the solo project. He didn't want to do anything with it. He was like, don't really want to spend any money, but let's see. So he came down to the studio and he played it for me. And I literally looked at him and I was like, if you don't do this, you're a fucking moron. I was like, this is one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my life. This is fucking phenomenal. And so I told him, I said, look, here's the price. Maybe I shouldn't say this on an actual interview, but I said, here's the price that you charge for production. Here's the studio cost. Here's this. And I was like, dude, I'm going to go ahead and say it, but I want to work with you so much, I'm going to cut my price to fucking nothing just so I can get you, because it's that good. And I was like, what I believe is I'm going to make next to nothing off producing your record. I'm going to make $0, no money. But that's going to bring me jobs in the future because you're that good.
And again, I love hearing that.
So I don't charge him, dude. I went to Switzerland. I just got home from recording his drums. I told him he had to pay the studio, obviously.
Oh, of course.
But I told him he didn't have to pay me for the production and the recording of the drums because I believe in the project so much. Now, obviously, I would have loved $1,000 because I'm struggling to pay my rent and got 2 kids and all that. But I'm a firm believer that he's going to continue to work with me and he's going to be huge, and my payoff won't be now, it'll be in 2 years. So I just went and recorded his drums for free. Also, he's a great dude and he's fun to be around. Like, I had a great time with him. We went and had a nice little fondue dinner, you know.
And that's such another great thing about it too, you know. It's just like, obviously having that working relationship is so great, but when you are able to expand that contact and you know, it's just like have like an actual friendship that comes with it, like going out to dinner, being able to just be able to have like a conversation back and forth, you know, whether it's about music or just life in general, or you know, just what could be.
Dude, we talk about life all the time, and he's a solo guy. So like I said, he's got, when it comes to like live performance, he's got a guitarist, a bassist. He's got people that do it, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to the recording and everything, he's self-financed. He's one guy. I'm not going to take advantage of him for that, but I also do feel like I'm taking advantage of him a little bit because I know that if I ever make a name for myself in this world, that's as a producer, it's going to be from him. So even charging him nothing and doing it for free, I still feel like I'm taking advantage because he's so fucking good and he chose me. So, hey man, I'm going to do it. But I also spend every waking moment I can working on this record. I'm going to give him my full attention because he's fucking brilliant, man. He's great.
And that's what's got me so excited about like the final product, and whenever that does come out, like I mean, I can't wait to check out what you already have, but that final product, when it's ready to show that off.
Pre-pro.
Yeah.
I sent it to a bunch of labels. I don't have to. Part of my job as the producer is to make sure that the record sounds good.
Yeah.
And so I have the pre-pro right now, but I sent it to a bunch of labels because I have friends at labels. I was like, what do you guys think of this? And they all were just like, holy shit, this is the pre-pro, not the record? I was like, nope, wait till you hear the record when we're done. And they were like, holy fuck. I would like to take credit for that, but I can't because half of it is Jan's amazing writing. You know, we're a great team together. So I want to send it to you because I think you're going to be like, wow, man, like this is what's going to make me where people are going to pay attention and go, you know what? I knew, well, maybe I might not have known who Kris was, but I knew him from Darkest Hour or whatever. They're going to go, I didn't know he produced records, and this is what he produced. Holy shit, I want to work with him. So it's a little bit of a egotistical kind of thing, how good it is to say, hey, maybe you should hire me.
And you know, as you're saying that, I'm also thinking about it on like my end too. Like I would love nothing more when the recording is done and it's in the final form. I would love to be able to help promote this thing. I'd love to be able to do like an interview with him and be able to promote the album the best of my ability to show everything off about it.
Definitely send it to you. The only problem is you probably won't be able to do an interview with him because he lives in the Swiss French side. His English is probably one of the most poor English speakers from the French side that I've ever encountered.
Well, even if I can just do an album review, I think, you know, just in any way, I would love to be able to help that.
It's funny, like if there was a fly on the wall when I'm doing vocal production with him, it's like normally, let's say it'll take a day to get this song done. Oh, God, with him, it takes 2 days because his English is so poor that for me to get something done with him, he's on Google Translate and he's doing this. It's actually very fucking comical. But I love the way that we work together at the same time. It's just so brilliant, you know?
Oh, totally. I mean, I can hear it in your voice. I hear that genuine authenticity that's going on behind it. And that's what's got me excited. Like I can read tone very well. And, you know, just hearing the tone and how excited you are about this and, you know, what it could do for you, what it could do for him, what it could do for music, you know, it's just like, that's a very genuine thing. And that's what makes me happy.
The reason I think you'll love it is, do you like the band Leprous?
Oh, yes.
Pretty much, if you were to take Leprous and put a record out, and so the band I'm working with, the band name is Sine Qua Non. I don't like the band name, but whatever. But their band name is Sine Qua Non. If you were to take a Leprous record and take the name Leprous off of it and replace it with the band name Sine Qua Non, you wouldn't know the difference.
I do love the sound of that.
So when we get off the phone, I'll send it to you. You're going to be like, wow, one guy? And so I won't send you the stuff we started working on, because when we first started, he was not good. But what I love about Jan is I told him ways to improve his voice, different tonal things he could do, ways he could, and he just listened and embraced it, and it was just beauty.
See, and that shows the impact that you do have with people too, because if he didn't trust your influence, he wouldn't have done what you said that it can help him. Like, you have that experience, and he trusts in you in that. That says a lot about you as well.
Well, not necessarily, because when he started the project, he had just started playing guitar, he just started singing, he didn't know how to do anything, so he put a lot of faith in me, not because he trusted me with my experience, but he didn't know otherwise.
I suppose that's one way to look at it, but it's like he could have easily went with someone
I know that
else.
for a fact. We've had this discussion where he was like, well, I needed a producer, I hired you, and so I just had to listen to you. But we built this amazing bond over it, like I'm just finishing my second record with them. We're going to do a third, and each one just keeps improving, because as we improve upon the records, I get paid so I can buy better gear, make the next record even better, and just invest back into the band. And he's fucking brilliant, dude. I sent it to Nuclear Blast, and they were blown away. He was like, holy shit. Monty was like, dude, I want to put the record out. And I was like, that's not the record, man. That's my pre-pro. He's like, what? Get the fuck out of here. Because I don't, when I do pre-pro with bands, I can be a little aggressive. They don't like it too much, but I'm like, I want the pre-pro to be like you would put that out as a record. We're going to do multi-layered vocals. We're going to work on your guitar tone. We're not going to plug in and be like, well, that's the riff. We're going to make this like the record. Because what we do is save time. So if during our pre-pro, we can record everything so professionally, when it comes time to do the record, guess what? It's already recorded.
It's so much simpler that way too. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it in the beginning, but the farther you get along, it's that much more rewarding knowing that you have so much of it done, and you can do it that way. Yeah.
Well, it just kind of goes back to the old, I guess you would say, German adage of work smarter, not harder,
Yeah.
Because why am I going to record all of his vocals during pre-pro, then go back for the recording and redo everything? If I can get a great tone and a great recording during the pre-pro, well, then that's the fucking record. I'm going to save my time, especially because having to work in Switzerland, you know what? Plane tickets aren't cheap.
No, especially now.
So if I can do pre-pro for you, and we get such a great recording that's the record, well, you just save yourself $1,200 in plane ticket.
And it's such a smart way to do it. Yeah, I wish there was more people who thought like that.
Well, it's just about making sure the band is happy too, because honestly, I don't have to buy the plane ticket. I could give two shits, and he's got to buy a plane ticket and fly me over there. Whatever, it doesn't come out of my fucking pocket.
Right.
But if it saves him money and he's happy, that means that maybe he's going to bring me back for a second record. So you have to keep, quote unquote, the artist. I hate using that term, but you have to keep the artist happy. But the job and the role also as a producer is, sometimes I'm not going to make them happy, because sometimes I'm going to have to say, you know what, that vocal line, it fucking sucks, and we're not using it because I think it's bullshit. Now, I'm not the be-all, end-all, but I'm going to, when I tell you your vocal line sucks, I'm going to explain you my reasoning behind it. And then we'll talk, and if you still want to use the vocal line and you don't agree with me, then we use your vocal line. That's great. I have no problem with that. We just have to listen to each other and give our reasonings behind it. Why do you like your vocal line as opposed to mine? And let's choose which is the best for the quote-unquote product, at the end of the day. No problem doing that. And what I love about some of the bands that I work with in Europe is they have a different mentality where they're like, okay, whatever you say, Kris, goes. You're the producer. And I'm like, no, that's not the way it is. I'm going to propose my idea to you, and then we're going to talk about this and democratically decide which is the best vocal line. If at the end of the day we can't decide, then I'm going to just usurp the power and say, okay, we're using my idea. That's why you paid me. But we're going to get to that point,
Definitely.
And I love working with the bands over there, because they do have a willingness to work with different ideas. And I always tell them too, like I'll send them, I'll work with Melodyne and all these other softwares, and I'll say, okay, here's an idea I have for your vocal. And then literally 20 minutes later, okay, well, what if we did this? I'm like, guys, sit on it for the weekend, man. Give it 3 days and then come back. And then 3 days later, they come back and they're like, okay, we listened to it. We actually like the idea. Yeah. Okay. Take some time, you know? Not everything has to be done during immediacy.
It's true. I mean, sometimes you just need to sleep on something or take a weekend, you know. It's okay. It will work out. And yeah, sometimes it just does take that time.
Yeah, depending on what it is. There are also other instances in production where I will send them, let's say, a kick drum tone, and I'm like, you guys need to tell me in 10 minutes which one you like, because I know their first initial reaction on that kick drum tone is going to be the one that's probably the best. So I'll work with them over the timeline to make sure that we choose the right thing for the record. And I think that's why I love Mark Lewis, because he does the same thing in his production. It's what is best for the quote-unquote product, because it's a product you're selling.
Yeah, even if some people do devalue it, it is still a product. It is still a thing that's going to be out there, and it can be used in so many different ways, and there are labels that want to be able to get behind it and promote it. There are tours that could happen with it if they are musicians that do want to tour behind it, and, you know, just being able to work yourself as a producer, you know, like being able to show the quality of what you can do with this kind of production and then be able to use that into future endeavors. There's so many different ways to go be able to go around it.
It also comes down to this. I don't know how big of a Seinfeld fan you are. Me, I'm a huge Seinfeld buff. One of my favorite shows of all time. So how big of a Seinfeld fan are you?
I have enjoyed, I mean, I do enjoy it. I mean, I can't say I've seen the entire series, but anytime that I've seen it on, I have laughed.
I know it like the back of my hand. So when they're proposing the show to the network, they're talking about how the show is about nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so George Costanza says the show is about nothing, blah, 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 and they keep talking, and the network exec says, so why am I watching this? And George Costanza goes, because it's on TV. He's kind of giving this moraise of people just watching shit because it's on TV. And the network exec goes, not yet. And I love that, because I tell that to my bands. I'm like, why are you doing this? And they're like, well, because we're doing this because it's a song. No, it's not a song yet. It becomes a song when people hear it. As of right now, it's just an idea. So what we need to do is work on your songs, because your song doesn't become a song until somebody else hears it. As of right now, it doesn't fucking exist. It's in limbo, you know? The second your song becomes a song is when that first person listens to it.
Yes.
Then you have a song. So what you need to do is make sure that that first listener gets the song that you want them to hear. Now, you might have an idea where the first listener hears it, and that's your idea. My job is to be the asshole and be like, well, they're gonna fucking hate it because it's not that good. Now, I might be wrong, but I can also use, you know, historical things and tell you I sold a lot of records and nobody knows your name, so maybe listen to me.
It's
Of
true.
course, I could be wrong. Maybe I wrote songs 20 years ago and things have changed. But what we're going to do is we're going to have an open discussion about this and find out when that first person hears your song and it becomes viable and it's a song, how are we going to make that person enjoy it? And there's been so many times in production where I have an idea for a band, and I love the sit and listen mode, because I'll give them an idea and I'll say, well, maybe we should do this with the verse, you know? And then Monday comes around and I go back to the guys and I'm like, you know what? My idea, fuck it, ignore it. It's stupid. It sucks. Let's go back to the original. Sorry, I was wrong. You need that time of reflection.
Absolutely. I mean, no one's infallible, and, you know, there are some good ideas that can come from it. There's bad ideas that can come from it. But if you don't try it out and you don't give it proper time to see how it works out, you just don't know.
Well, you have to try everything, and when you the only way you know an idea is bad is when you try it and you realize it's bad. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, granted, it does take more time, and obviously studios cost money, so you don't want to waste money trying ideas that aren't going to work. But that also comes in terms of like preparation during pre-production. Let's do so much extensive pre-production that when we get to the studio, we already know what we're doing and we're not wasting time and money. Because I don't mind sitting on Zoom, Skype, whatever, the preference of the band is, couple weeks, every couple months, so we know when we're getting to the studio and they're paying $750 a day to record their drums, that we know exactly what we're supposed to do. I don't mind doing that, because at the end of the day, my name goes on it too. I can't tell you how many records I worked on where I have to call the manager and be like, take my name off. It's not because I did a bad job or the band's bad. It's just they weren't prepared.
Yeah, it does happen.
Oh, it happens all the time. Well, why don't want your name on? We hired you for your name. Okay, well then why didn't you fucking practice your goddamn instrument?
Yes.
Now, it's different too. If you call me and say, I have 2 kids at this age, I'm single, I'm divorced, I work this job, I didn't have time to practice. That's a different scenario, I'll work with you on that. But if you call me and say, well, I didn't really prepare for the studio because I went and got drunk and I had a bunch of festivals I wanted to go to. Okay, get the fuck out of here.
Yes.
Because, dude, I've actually had that where I did a record and the singer came in and he had an allergic reaction because he went to an outdoor festival the night before the recording. And the vocals sounded terrible. He's like, I think I sound fine. I was like, shit, no, you don't. So we had to move the recording. They lost the money for the day in the studio because you still have to pay for it. You can't just show up at the studio and be like, I can't sing today. I don't want to pay. No, you still pay for the studio.
Yeah.
Because he went to an outdoor festival and his hay fever and allergies hit him and his tone was terrible. Well, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have gone to the fucking festival. That's not on me.
No.
Because I'm not the one that has to pay for the studio,
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is it reflects on me. Well, why didn't you make sure he didn't? Well, because he's 33 years old. I'm not his fucking father. I can tell him don't go to the festival, but what am I supposed to do? Show up at his house and handcuff him and lock him to the fucking door and say, you're not going to the festival? No, he's an adult.
Yeah. And those are the consequences that you take when you make the actions that you choose.
But that's the kind of the problem in the music industry, especially when you get into production, is then they blame you. And they're like, oh, well, you should have been harder and stricter on him. What? Like, no. He's not 12 years old. No. If I do that, then the problem is I'm going to handcuff your fucking singer to a door and say you're not allowed to go to the festival so the recordings are good. And then now you tell everybody I'm a restrictive asshole. Like, there's no win-win situation in that.
There's not, and you shouldn't have to be that kind of babysitter. I mean, that's not part of
it. Dude, you have to, and anybody will tell you in this industry, first of all, the number one asshole is the manager. You blame them for everything. Even if they did nothing wrong, they're the fucking asshole. The band are a bunch of fucking Nazi pricks? Blame the manager, That's just the way it works. Then it trickles down to next, after the manager, is the booking agent. Oh, the booking agent didn't do their job. Well, of course they did. Nobody wanted to hire a bunch of fucking meth addicts,
It's true.
It trickles down, and the last person that it ever gets to is the band members. So you deal with the bullshit and the grunt of it trickling down until it gets to the band members. But you do it in the hopes that maybe in November my rent's paid.
And that's how trickle-down economics works.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, dude, my kid.
Totally.
Program, yeah. He's in all these crazy classes. So he's got an economics class, and he'll be like, "Hey, Dad, can you come in here and help me with my homework real quick?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then we go through it, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me with this problem?" And I'm like, "I have no fucking clue what you're looking at, first of all, because you're in this gifted advanced program. But second of all, you're talking about, like, any weird economical situation." And I'm like, "Bud, I can't help you with your problem right now because when I was your age, shit was way different, man."
Oh, yes. Oh.
It was just totally different. So I feel bad because my kid's always like, "Dad, help me with my homework." And I'm like, I wish I could. I feel like an idiot because I don't know. I'm 44 years old. This is completely foreign to me. Like, you might as well have asked me to walk in your room and say, "Speak Chinese." Because I have no fucking clue what's going on right now. And then you feel like an idiot. And then I want to learn, what my son's going through and what he's learning so I can help him out. And then I do some research and I learn it. And then 2 weeks later, it's completely fucking different. Oh, now we're doing Common Core math. Wait, what do you mean? What's that?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, they just, I don't know if you know about Common Core
Oh
math.
yeah, it was definitely something after my time in school and stuff like that. But
Oh, it
I
was
have seen
way
videos
after
on it. But
you're in my time.
oh yeah, totally. And it's like I understand how some kids can learn that, but I just know that's not in my field. I'm still familiar with the way that we grew up, knowing how to do multiplication and division and all those things, not the Common Core style.
But the problem is, like, when you have somebody like my son that spent 5 6 years learning math a certain way, or me, for example, but even for him, 5 6 years with all this stuff drilled into his head, and then all of a sudden the next year he goes to a different school and they completely change it, and he doesn't get it, and he gets a bad grade, and I'm like, look, my kid's not a fucking idiot. But you just changed it on him, you know? It's kind of like I grew up in the northern part of the country. I grew up in Ohio. We definitely speak different in Ohio than we do in Arkansas. You can't just all of a sudden say, I want you to speak like an Arkansan or Texarkana. It's not going to fucking work. Give me some time.
It's so true.
They got different colloquialisms, you know? They all mean the same thing. Doesn't mean I'm a fucking idiot. It just means that, me saying soda and you saying pop is two different things, even though it means the same thing.
Yeah, drinking fountain, water
or-
fountain, bubbler. It's like they're all the same things.
Yeah, or the difference is, especially in America, would you like that in a bag? Do you want a sack? Like, the first time I heard, do you want that in a sack? I was like, what? What do you mean in a sack?
Like
That's where your
potato
balls
sack?
go, you know? I don't fucking know what you're talking about. But it doesn't mean you're a moron.
No.
But at the same time, you have to give people the opportunity and the time to adjust to that. You can't just expect it overnight. I didn't just wake up when I moved from Ohio to Florida and wake up tomorrow morning and all of a sudden know fucking Southern speak. No, I have to learn it for a little bit of time. And they expect these young children to just adapt overnight to this new Common Core math and all this stuff. And if you don't, you're labeled as some fucking moron. I'm like, what?
And that just blows my mind because you can get the same answer, but it's just done so differently.
And I always tell my kid, his name's Soren, I always tell him, I'm like, look, bud, I know I shouldn't go against your school and against your teachers and all that stuff, but fuck it. My thing is, did you get the right answer? It doesn't matter how you got there from point A to B. Did you get to point B? And if you did, I don't care if you get an F in this class. Now, obviously, when you go to college and you're looking at scholarships and all that, that's going to really matter. But if you got to point B correctly and they give you an F because you didn't follow their rules and their guidelines of what you're supposed to do to get there, you're never going to make me mad. The only reason you're going to make me mad is if you don't try. And he understands that, and he does. He gets bad grades because he doesn't follow their rules all the time. And I'm like, Soren, I don't get this because you gave the right answer, but you didn't give the right answer the way they wanted you to. And I don't agree with that. To me, that's bullshit.
It is.
And now he's got an F in math because he got to point B, but not the way they wanted him to. I think that's stupid.
Yeah, that just blows my mind how that works.
But it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, too, a little bit, is like the teacher, their job with the minuscule amount of money they make is to just put an A, B, C, D, E, or F. Their job is to not work with the student.
That is true.
And obviously his teacher isn't going to mark it as a certain grade and then call me or his mom and work with us so he can learn the system. There's no F. I'm not being paid enough, which I understand at the same time also, you know?
Oh, totally.
But I don't want my kid's college career to suffer because a teacher doesn't get paid enough.
Right.
So it's just it's a fucking nightmare all around, dude.
It really is.
But I'm of a firm belief is like, even with all the bullshit, the minutia, and all the other stuff that we struggle with, I try and keep a positive attitude on everything. You know, I actually recently just learned last year for the first time, almost 44 years old, that I have Asperger's. I didn't know it. I always thought that I was just kind of this weird kid that like nobody understood, you know? Mm-hmm. Now I'm getting a little bit of insight into why I am the way I am. And obviously I don't agree with it because I don't like putting labels on things. You know, oh, this person's the way he is because we can diagnose him as this. You know, I think it's bullshit. But I'm learning a little bit more about myself as I get older. I wish I had known this a lot earlier. And it's quite a bit of a struggle. But the brilliant thing about it is like my ex-wife. She's like, now that she knows more about me, she's more comfortable of why we got divorced, for example. Mm-hmm. Now it's not just, oh, we didn't get along. Now it's, I know maybe we didn't work out because I didn't know you had this condition and you didn't know, you know? So it's great to learn these kind of things. But I think the commonality of the public doesn't really understand what goes on in the, not just the brain, but the day-to-day thoughts of people that have some of these issues, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I keep telling myself for the last couple of years, you're just different. You're just different. And I'm starting to realize that's an excuse. That's not right. No, I'm not different. I just have a difference. Because I believe in language. Language is my favorite thing. And there's something completely to be said about being different or having a difference. So I can't use that as an excuse, because I do see in a lot of people that learn later in life, okay, I have Asperger's, I have autism, whatever. Well, then they say, well, now I can just be a fucking lazy prick for the rest of my life because I got a condition. They use it as this crutch and as this excuse. I don't use that as a crutch and excuse for what I'm going to do in my future. I just use it as, okay, maybe now I understand why when I was 17, I didn't have any friends. And I think what we need to do is take these like psychological things that are happening with kids. Now we have, let's say, a term for, in 1956, way before I was born, but nobody knew what fucking Asperger's were and all this other shit. Now we have a label. But just because you label something doesn't mean it fixes things. Because if I'm moving tomorrow and I buy a label maker and I put a little piece of paper on my box and it says kitchen, if that label falls off, it doesn't fucking matter. So just putting a label on something doesn't fix all your problems. Understanding the label, taping it to it, that's where you go.
Absolutely. And it's just like, it's, even though you are still constantly learning about yourself too, I mean, it's good to know a bit more about yourself. And for a reason, some things could have gone the way that they have, but the fact that you can't let that limit you still got to be able to live your life. You got to try not to be an asshole. You got to and not limit yourself because you have this, that, or the other thing. You still want to be able to live the most fulfilling life that you possibly can, and not just rest on things because of a label, like you've mentioned.
Yeah, it's like the guy who goes out and plays basketball and then breaks his ankle and he says, "Government, help! Can't work anymore. Broke my ankle playing basketball." Like, no, obviously there are some people with mental conditions that are going to need some kind of help. But if you bust your ass and really push and you still need help, nothing wrong with it. But there's so many lazy fucking idiots these days that do the same thing, that go, oh, well, I was diagnosed as this, so now I get government help, I get whatever I want. And if my kid ends up with some kind of like mental deficiency, just genetics, bad DNA, whatever, so be it. But I don't want him to just, jump into that. I want him to give everything he can, and then if that ends up being it, so what? Hey, man, sorry. Sorry that me and your mom had sex 15 years ago and we ruined your life, The other option was condoms and you're not here, which we still did. So obviously there's some weird amalgamation of God that said, nope, you're going to have this baby. Because, dude, we tried everything. So he's meant to be here for some fucking reason. There's some weird, God system out there. And he went, you know what? Let's take your birth control. Let's take your condoms. And let's also take the fact that you have a thyroid deficiency and you shouldn't even get pregnant. And there you go. Let's test you. Okay, thanks. You turned me into Job all of a sudden,
All just with a deal for the devil.
I would not change anything in the world for him, man. He made my life such a great thing.
He definitely sounds like it, yeah.
I mean, it's such a struggle monetarily to be able to afford a teenager. First of all, I remember joining Darkest Hour in my 20s, traveling all over the world, playing in the Philippines and getting on a plane and being super drunk, and I'm with my brothers and my boys, and then we go to Europe, and then we go to Rome, and we go, oh, dude, it was just fucking amazing. It's like living the dream. And then you have this baby that you have to support, man. He didn't ask to be here. And the biggest detriment about all of that is I love him being here. Dude, when we play video games, we watch movies, we have such a great time. He's awesome, brilliant boy. The monetary thing fucking sucks, because there is no help for somebody who has a child at all in this country.
No.
But I also agree that there shouldn't be. Just because I decided to impregnate some girl doesn't mean that I'm entitled to something, Because if that was the case, hey, man, I'm going to put a fucking sign up on my door, and I'm going to go have 50 kids. If every time you have a kid, the government supports you and gives you everything, I literally am going to go have 50 kids right now. It doesn't work that way.
No.
So it's a definitely, financial struggle to have him. But what it does is it kind of gives you a little sense of purpose too, because if I didn't have him when I'm in a financial struggle, I'm going to be like, well, fucking who cares? You know, I'll live off ramen for the next 2 weeks. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But you can't do that to the kid. You're like, no, he needs to eat healthy. So it gives you like a sense of purpose.
Oh, for sure.
Which is awesome. And now I have two. Now I have the 2-year-old. So I have a double sense of purpose. Unfortunately, I had the 2-year-old during our economic despair where rent just increased. And it really fucks you monetarily wise. But at the same time, you're like, you know what? I hope and I pray. And if he doesn't, then I'm going to give him shit later when he's older. But I hope and pray that everything that I'm struggling through right now to give this kid a good life, I hope when he's 14 and 15, he fucking understands that. And if he doesn't, no car. Learn to drive on your own, little piece of shit.
It's totally understandable, too.
But part of that comes also with raising the child, because if the child turns 14 and hates you, that's your own fault. Now, obviously, there are kids born evil. No matter what you do, they're just fucking degenerates, you know?
Sure.
But if your kid is 15 and turns into this bad fucking idiot, you do have something to do with that. Now, again, there are some kids that meet the wrong crowd, and there's just nothing you can do. Like, you can say, I did everything for him, but it didn't work. There are those instances, you know?
Oh, totally.
But if my kid's an asshole at 15, I would like to think that a lot of part of that is because of what I didn't do correctly for him. So I hope all I can do is guide him the right way and let him, first of all, I want him to make his own decisions. It's like my dad. My dad, I thought he did a brilliant fucking thing when I was younger. And, you know, you have the sex talk with your parents. You have the drug talk, all that stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things my dad did a lot of drugs when he was younger. Not like a coke addict. He experimented, let's say, you know?
Yeah.
And when he sat me down for the drug talk, he told me, he said, I'm not going to stop you from doing drugs. He said, if you want to, you go out and you experiment. He said, I want you to learn when you wake up tomorrow morning after doing some stupid drug, how bad you feel, that you won't want to do it again. He said, because if I tell you you're not allowed to do it, first of all, it's going to make you want to do it even more.
Mm-hmm.
That forbiddenness, you know? He said, I want you to go out and go ahead, go smoke weed at 14, and then wake up tomorrow and be like, fuck, this sucks. And when he told me that, I was like, well, now I don't even want to do it. So I never did, because well, first of all, he gave me the opportunity. He didn't force me, because when you force somebody, you're not allowed to do this. Of course you're going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
But he sat me down. It was a long conversation. It wasn't like, I'm paraphrasing, but it wasn't just like 2 seconds. But he told me his experiences with the substances and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to be like that. So I never tried it, because he actually had a one-on-one conversation with me about it. And he never said, you cannot do this. He was like, after all this, if you want to go out and smoke weed, you want to go try cocaine, do whatever, go for it, you know? And I was like, nah, you kind of made it not seem fun. So I stayed away most of my life from it, you know?
And it's a smart way to have that discussion as well, too.
Yeah, you just have to be, it's what we talked about, you know, kind of here and there in this conversation. You just have to be real with people.
Yes, it's so true. I mean, like, living here in the Midwest, it's like, it's the land of passive aggressiveness. Like, rather than explaining how you feel, there's so people, you just like make snarky remarks until you're building everything up inside, and then you just explode, rather than just being honest with each other.
I lived in Iowa at Joey's house for a couple years. I know that Midwest mentality, trust me. I actually liked it. I preferred it as opposed to the East Coast mentality. It was very, very nice living with Joey and being in Iowa. It was more calming, let's say.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if that's like the Midwest mentality, if it was calming, or I was living with the best, most amazing drummer in the world, and that made everything calming, you know?
It could be a little bit of both. I mean, there's good people all around the world, and there's good places to always be, and there's always good people in those areas, but there's always the stereotypes that come along with it too, you know, like the East Coast mentality, the Midwest mentality. I mean, there's so many different things that can go along with it. I mean, I do know with the Midwest that, you know, it's just like here in Minnesota, you know, it's like there's the phrase Minnesota nice that always comes around, but, you know, it's just like I also know the other side of that, where there's a lot of passive aggression that goes along with that as well too. So, you know, it's kind of that yin yang situation as well too, where it's like when you do hear about like the good things, there's always the opposite that goes along with it as well.
Well, yeah, and you know, I grew up in Ohio, so kind of up north, but not fully East Coast. And then I went to college in Virginia, so I've been kind of more like centralized to the East Coast. And every once in a while you get this kind of like mentality that comes out, New York mentality, upper East Coast kind of thing. And like you could be in Iowa and some dude, you're at a restaurant, he says something ridiculous. It's just paraphrasing, never happened, but he says something and he's just real calm about it, very Midwest farmer mentality, and then the East Coast comes in and you're like, what the fuck did you fucking just say to me? And all of a sudden the guy looks like he just murdered his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at yourself and you're like, oh my God, did I really just say that to that guy? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I buy you a drink? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, because the East Coast comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like the West Coast mentality where you have like the Midwest and the guy says, hey, you accidentally spilled your drink on me. The East Coast goes, the fuck does it mean to you? Fuck you. And then you got a California guy that's like, oh, well, can I make it better? Can I suck your dick? Like they just live in a completely different world. It's just odd how we have this. America is so big, man.
It really is.
It's like you have people, oh, we should succeed and we should have this part. No, that's not going to work, first of all. We just have to realize that if you live in California, you're a little different than Minnesota. You're definitely different than Iowa, and you're definitely different than fucking Arkansas.
It's so true.
But it works. It works if you let it. The only time it doesn't work with all the cultures we have and this huge conglomerate thing we have in the country is if you don't let it.
Yes.
And I think people are just so politically, not to get back to politics, but we're so divided these days because our politics come from what we read on our phones and our technology. Like I said, I wake up every morning and I look at my little news app and come out here and grab an energy drink before the kids get up, and that's my source of truth. But what if that truth is false? So we live in this like divided area because we don't rely on ourselves anymore. We literally rely on smart news.
Yes. And a huge thing that comes with it, like I talked about before, like tone matters so much as well too. Like you can't tell what's a joke or sarcasm or straightforward or what's a lie when you're just reading text. Like
exactly. I can't tell you how many friends I have that even though we've known each other for 20 plus years, and they'll text and they'll be like, hey man, how you doing? And I'm like, go suck a dick. I've known these guys for 20 years. They should know that I'm just fucking joking. But then they'll be like, why are you mad at me? Because it doesn't convey. Even though they've known me for 20 years, it still doesn't convey to them that, hey man, I'm just fucking with you. That's my personality. You should know that after knowing me for 20 years. But it's so hard to tell context from a couple characters on your phone.
It's true, and I don't want to rely on emojis or GIFs or whatever to try to explain my context. I just want to write the words out if I'm going to say something online.
Right, so now when I joke with my friends, not only do I have to say, hey, go suck a dick, I have to create a paragraph. Hey, go suck a dick. By the way, I woke up this morning and I'm just joking with you, and I have to context everything.
Yeah.
But if he was sitting in my house, I would give a little eyebrow raise and be like, hey, go fuck yourself. And he'd be like, okay, he's joking. We've lost that, not even innate, but we've lost that human connection with each person because we live so much on emoji.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know if you've seen, because I hate this fucking stupid shitty woke culture, but they're trying to get rid of the thumbs up emoji?
I did not hear about this.
Okay, you'd have to research it, but you go ahead and Google it when we get on the phone. But they're trying to get rid of the thumbs up emoji because they say it's too passive aggressive. What?
Wow.
Because, so I just explained that to you and I said, what?
Yeah.
That right there is a thumbs up emoji. Like, if you write me and say, hey, I'm going to come to your house, I'll be there at 9 o'clock, I'm going to give you a thumbs up. Okay. What that means is I did not spend the time to write you and say, okay, thank you. I heard you. You will be here at 9 o'clock. I will be ready for you. I'll have the door open. If the door's not open, you can knock on the door. No, I just give you a fucking thumbs up. But now they're trying to get rid of it because they say it's too passive aggressive.
I live in the land of passive aggressive, and I've never thought of the thumbs up as being passive aggressive.
Dude, I'm not joking. Look it up. They are literally petitioning to get the thumbs up emoji removed from Unicode and everything else because they say it's too passive aggressive. Get the fuck out of here.
That isn't. Wow.
Yeah, that's not a joke, man.
Yeah,
That's
no,
like
no,
actual
I believe
truth.
you. There's the sad, cynical side where I'm not even surprised by it at the same time because of.
Isn't that the saddest part? The saddest
Yeah.
part is that they're not trying to remove the thumbs up and get it removed from Unicode and everything else. The sad part is that you wouldn't expect anything less.
Yeah.
That's the true, like, sadness of it. Like, come on. I can't tell you how many times my girlfriend texts me and says, hey, I'm on my way home from work. Thumbs up. That means, okay, cool, see you soon. But now that's passive-aggressive. What the fuck, man? I'm not Harvey Weinstein here. You're like, come on, man.
No.
Yeah, but
Fucking hell.
everything is this whole, like, oh, woe is me. Come on, man. I'm getting so sick of that because I don't fucking care, man. I'm 44 years old. I can deal with your bullshit and your minutia. I don't fucking care. But now my son's got to deal with that, and I don't want my kid to grow up as somebody I hate, because the worst thing in the world would be my son to text me, which he does every day, so I have to pick him up from school, but I don't pick him up at school. I pick him up at the gas station next door, so I don't have to deal with the traffic.
Yeah.
And he texts me every day, Dad, whose car are you in? My car or my girlfriend's? And I'll be like, hey, the blue car, my car, or the other. Sometimes he'll write back and I'll say, hey, Dad, I'm going to be 5 minutes late. And I give him a thumbs up. I can't imagine a world where my son says, Dad, I'm going to be 5 minutes late, and I give him a thumbs up and I get a response back. That's passive aggressive, Dad.
Where he goes, yeah, well, fuck you too.
Then my response is, good luck, fucking walk home. Like, really? We live in a world that now I have to teach my kid that if I give him a thumbs up saying I'll see you there at 2:50, buddy, that's passive aggressive?
I really hope that it does become one of those, not necessarily fake outrage, because I know there is like misplaced outrage that comes with that, but I just hope it's one of those things that never comes to fruition. I hope it never becomes a part of like the general conversation, because that is just fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone to the point that now we're attacking comedians.
Yes.
And I wholeheartedly don't agree with that. I think comedians should be able to be the most offensive idiots in the world. That's their job.
I mean,
even if you don't laugh, part of comedy, I love comedy, it's one of my favorite things. Part of comedy, what people forget, is not just to make you laugh, but it's also to offend you. That's part of comedy. And now we're attacking comedians for their jokes, which means now we're ruining their job because you're offended that they did their job. Because that's what I think people forget is, oh, this comedian offended me. Oh, you mean he did his job?
Yeah.
Because what that means to me is if you go and you need an oil change and the guy changes your oil, that to me is you saying, he changed my oil. He did his job.
Well,
that's
fuck
why
him
you're
too.
at the fucking show. And anybody that goes to a comedy show and gets offended and pays for a ticket is a fucking moron.
Yes. And
I don't get the way that this whole offensiveness of our culture.
And it's just so funny to me because like I'm left on so many political issues, but what did I grow up with? I grew up with 90s George Carlin, which was all about offensive and words and what they mean and all of these different things. Like, I know how to take a joke. I know how to laugh. And when you stop learning how to laugh and you take everything so seriously, the world is no longer a good place to be in. And that is part of where we are right now. Like, if you can't laugh at a comedian, like, what can you laugh at? What can you enjoy in life?
Music criticism.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody says, I don't like this song. Well, why didn't you stop it after 5 seconds? Why did you wait all 5 minutes of the song to listen to it to complain? It's because you needed ammunition to complain about. Because if you listen to 5 seconds of a song, you can't complain about it.
No.
Because you don't know the song. You want to listen to the whole song so you can fucking complain.
Yes. And then you're waiting for that reaction online for everyone to agree with you, or even better, tell you how wrong you are. That way you can have that fight online in the comments section and just going back and forth with each other.
Yeah, people love arguing. It's built into our nature. People love arguing. But there is a difference between arguing and fighting. Well, no, maybe not. There is a difference between healthy discussion and fighting.
Yes.
And people love that aggression. We've become such an aggressive fucking culture, man. And I don't like that because I'm fine, man. I live from the old age. I don't fucking care. I don't want my kid to get involved in that. I don't want to get a phone call tomorrow that, hey, you got to come pick your kid up because he got into a fight at school. Because when I was a kid, my parents never got the call that I got in a fight at school because I went to the playground after school was over and we fought one-on-one, and, that was the way it was. Nobody brought a gun, a knife. But now it's like, dude, it's honestly, I'll tell you, man, I've talked to my ex-wife about this a lot. We wish we had more money because we wanted to put our son in private school, especially with the ability and the knowledge that he has and everything.
Yeah.
But not only that, we sit and drop him off at school and then sit and read our news stories about every fucking school shooting. And we're just like, man, you worry as a parent. And so what I should be doing from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock a day, like at the day when I go pick him up, is I should be working. I shouldn't be sitting here worrying, fuck, I hope no fucking idiot brings a gun to school because his, parents raped his cousin. Like, no, I shouldn't have to be worrying about that. But we do live in that where I talk to his mom all the time and I'm like, I hope everything's okay today. So I have a thing with him. I make him text me all the time that everything's okay at school. Like, he can't use his phone during class, right? But like between class when he's going to the next class, I'm like, bud, just text me and be like, hey, everything's cool, Dad. See you at 5 o'clock. I shouldn't have to fucking do that, but I do because I worry about my son.
Of course.
And I'm not worried about my son. It's like driving. I'm not worried about myself driving the car. I'm worried about the other guy on the road. I don't know if he fucking just did 2 lines of coke, Maybe he's gonna run into me. And so I have to worry about that with my son. Maybe my son's okay, but is there some fucking weirdo kid at school who's got some mental deficiency whose parents kicked him in the head today, and now he brings a fucking AK to school and shoots everybody up? The crazy thing is, like, if in 1982, my dad said, you know what I'm really worried about? I'm really worried about this parent got in a fight with his kid, and he brought a assault rifle to school and shot everybody. Everybody go, oh my God, what the fuck are you smoking? Now when you say that, everybody goes, I understand. That's the sad fact.
Oh, yeah. And sadly, I can relate to that. I mean, it wasn't like a school shooting, but I mean, it kind of was. Like a couple years before Columbine, I had my first cousin who got the shit beaten out of him by his parents. He went to school and shot himself. He survived.
Oh, wow.
He shot himself in the face and survived. And he's still going to this day. But it was just like a couple years before Columbine happened, and no one heard of anything like that happening before. And it was the same elementary school that I went to. It was fucking scary, and you never heard about that stuff. And now I can't even imagine being a parent right now.
There was a gun scare at my kid's school 2 weeks ago.
Fuck.
And I got a notification on my phone, and so it was kind of like an Amber Alert like we have in Florida. My phone goes, and so with the Amber Alerts, it's not like a text message where you swipe and it goes away.
Yeah.
So the way the Amber Alerts, I don't know if it's the same there, but the way they work in Florida is you can't just swipe it. It goes and goes and goes. And so obviously my son's mother, she starts calling me. She's freaking out because there was a gun scare at a school. It ended up being a prank, thank God. But the school, thankfully, I'm so thankful, they did their fucking job, man. They locked down, the cops were there, and so they have this thing called a lockbox in front of my kid's school. And it's a little code, and when you put the code in and open the lockbox, there's an assault rifle inside. And so the administration, all they got to do is put the code in and take the lockbox, and they can get an assault rifle. It doesn't matter if you're an administrator, if you're a librarian, you take that out and you fucking shoot whoever, is causing the problems, because that's how Florida is.
Yeah.
Which is great, but we were scared. We're like, what the fuck is going on? It ended up being a prank. And so I was talking to his mom, and I was like, look, I don't know if it's harsh or not, but I don't care if that kid's fucking 13 years old. He needs to suffer some consequences.
Yes.
Because is it, at that point, is it the kid's fault, or is there some home life thing going on? Maybe his fucking parents are degenerates. I don't know. Maybe somebody needs to step in there and figure it out. But it was scary as a parent to be like, what's going on with my kid? Mm-hmm. So we do know that there are things put in place that I know for a fact that if there was a shooting at the school, that administrator is putting that code in, and that librarian is going to fucking kill that kid.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
worried about it. It's fucking Florida, we're the land of lawlessness.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, why do you have to deal with that shit? Well, because it's the world we live in. You deal with it. You have to just embrace it and say, you know what? It fucking sucks, but that's how things are. It's kind of like, I have friends in the Ukraine right now with everything they're dealing with. Their first thing they'll tell you is, well, it's just what we gotta fucking deal with. We can't change it. You know, like the band Ginger.
Yeah.
They're like, well, we wake up and deal with bombs. You know what? It's what we gotta do.
But it's funny you bring that up. About a month and a half ago, I interviewed a band from the Ukraine, and there was an explosion outside their window as we were doing the interview.
Oh, wow. That just reminds me, my stepdad, he did 4 tours in Iraq. He's actually really high up in the military. My mom was freaking out when he was over on one of his tours during the Iraq War. And so we would be on Skype with him, shitty fucking camera connection and all that.
Yeah.
And there would be bombs going off. And my mom's freaking out every time the camera shakes. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so worried, because it's her husband. And my stepdad over there in Iraq in the military, he's like, ah, you get used to it. I'm like, what? No. But it was nothing to him. Like, the camera shaking, bombs going off. My mom's freaking out. Oh my God, my husband. And he's just like, you get used to it. Like, no, that's not how humans fucking behave, man.
It's just baffling how that works.
Well, it all comes down to my dick is bigger than yours.
Oh, that's all it is. Or my God's dick is bigger than your God's dick.
Yeah, especially when you get the religion involved, you know? Because religion for me is one of the funniest things, because I get people that believe in higher powers and all that. I totally 100% honestly get that some people have such a low faith that they need somebody to believe in. I have no problem with that, man, but that's your faith, not mine.
Right.
The second you try and tell me, I'll tell you this story. You can go ahead and put this one on the interview, because my ex-wife, if she heard it, she would laugh her ass off. We used to have a nice house when I was actively in Darkest Hour and making good money. And so we lived in this neighborhood, really nice neighborhood, what you would quote-unquote call like a white neighborhood, you know?
Yeah.
We had a nice house, all that. And we would get Jehovah's Witnesses all the fucking time, man. They used to come by all the time. And I used to just I'd open the door and they'd be like, hey, we'd like to shut the door. Don't care. Don't waste my time. One day I decided I'm going to fuck with them. Like, I'm fucking tired of these people, man. So maybe if I, get them so hard, they'll stop coming to my house and knocking on my door at fucking 8 o'clock in the morning, you know? And I gave them so much shit. So I opened the door and they're like, we would like to talk to you about blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, cool. Why don't you come in and sit down? Because there's some things I'd like to talk to you about as well. So we bring them in, they sit down and they're talking to me and they give me their literature and all that. And I'm like, well, so here's the thing. I'm actually an active Satanist and I believe that human sacrifice. And I don't remember what I said, but I went off the rails, Just the dumbest shit that you could fucking imagine anybody saying. And so they left, obviously, scared, out of their mind. And my ex-wife was like, why were you so rude to them? Why would you do that? They're just trying to sell their thing, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, next time one of them come, you can fucking deal with it. And so a little bit later, another one comes knocking on the door. And then I'm like sitting in the living room and I hear her from the other room giving the same spiel. Because she was like, I can't fucking deal with these people. I was like, yep, see, that's exactly what it is. Don't push your shit, man.
It's solicitation.
Oh yeah, it's literally a cult.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite bands in the world. It's the cult of personality.
Yes, it is.
Well, and it's also the cult of sales.
Yes. When you have to buy into a religion, that's usually a sign.
Yeah. Exactly. I got no problem with religion. I'm anti-religious. Well, so let me rephrase that. I'm not anti-religious. I don't care if you are.
Right.
I'm against anything that's kind of organized for the wrong reasons. AA, narcoholic, NA, that's an organized thing, but it's serving a purpose. Whatever. But I'm against any kind of organized thing that benefits only the people in the organization.
Yes.
And that's what, to me, most religion is, except in certain parts of the world. In certain parts of the world, you have religions that are a faith that gives them hope. I'm okay. I'm all for that, as long as I'm not going to hell because I don't believe that your, Sims creator all of a sudden decided that he's going to put a fucking bathroom here. Because that's what it is. Religion is a simulation when you look at Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. And my ex-mother-in-law, huge Christian, but we never argue about it because she is not of the firm belief that I'm going to hell because I don't believe in her fucking fairy tale. Great. She believes what she does, and it actually gets her through the day. I'm all for that. But you don't have to constantly tell me I'm going to hell because your fucking sky god doesn't exist, you know?
Exactly.
But that's like the whole point of it. It's like,
yeah.
come on, man, what happened to the humor? You know, there doesn't have to be any maliciousness on that stuff. If there is maliciousness, then of course, then it's fucking horrible and don't do it. But context is so important with that.
Yes. Couldn't agree more.
And that's the whole thing too with you as like an interviewer. A lot of people you interview are probably very scared to say certain things about what they are and who they are because they're afraid it might offend somebody, even if it's not offensive. Because we used to be offended by somebody talking about the Holocaust and all the bad shit that happened, and rightfully so. But what happened was now making a joke about somebody's food habits is just as bad as making a Holocaust joke. No, it's fucking not.
No, it's not.
If you're a vegan and I make fun of you for being a vegan, it's not the fucking same as me making fun of a Holocaust joke.
No.
But we've correlated it to that point where if I make fun of you because you eat fucking rabbit food and you're a vegan, now it's just as bad as calling somebody a Jew. No, it's not. Calling somebody something racially offensive is terrible and horrible. Making fun of somebody because they're a vegan, not the same, man.
No, not even close.
And of course, I'm not going to make fun of a vegan that I just met. I'm going to make fun of my friends that are vegans because we know the joke. And I don't care if they're vegan. Half the shit I eat is fucking vegan anyway. I just do it because it gets a rise out of my friends.
And if you can't make your friends laugh, then what are you doing?
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is my friends know the context. So when I make the joke about them, my friend Jan, the guy from Cinequanon, he's complete vegan. I make fun of him all the time for it. That's our camaraderie, and that's the way that we know each other. Now, he's got, like I said, he's a single guy doing the band, but he's also got other people in his band. He's got multiple members. He's got the drummer, he's got the guitarist, he's got the bassist. I don't know those guys, man. I didn't produce them. I worked on the record with Jan. I'm not going to make the fucking joke to them because I know the goddamn difference.
Yeah.
Now, I might make a joke to them, but I'm going to make sure that it's not offensive. And if it is offensive, well, guess what? I'm sorry. Thicken your fucking skin, dude. I made a joke about you being vegan. I didn't fucking kill your mother.
No.
And that's one thing I do love about the Europeans, is even if you just, like, generally meet somebody in the beginning, you can make those jokes. Most people wouldn't, but you can still make those kind of jokes with somebody because that's called breaking the ice. And they understand that, and that actually builds camaraderie with a lot of the Europeans because they like that natural honesty instead of I'm afraid to say something to them because then you're walking on eggshells the whole time and they don't even know if you're their friend or not. I think it's really cool that the way they do that, they're like, because not only if I meet somebody for the first time there and I make fun of them, they give it right back. And I think that's brilliant. That's what builds camaraderie. Now, of course, don't make like super fucking offensive bullshit and all that.
Of course.
But you know your boundaries and know your limitations, I guess is the thing.
Couldn't agree more.
And we are just so, that's why I fear for my kid. We're so coddled here that even a simple joke can offend you. I'm like, you realize that was nothing, right? You know, I didn't call your mother a fucking slut whore. I made a simple joke. But no, we live in a world where now even a simple one-word thing that can be misconstrued, misinterpreted. Maybe that's not even a joke. You just misinterpret it.
Or
it drives me fucking nuts.
Or even now, just a thumbs up.
Yep, exactly. Oh, dude, you got to find out and do the Google research and look on how they're trying to cancel that because it boggles my mind.
I knew about the OK sign. I did not know about the thumbs up.
Oh yeah, they're trying to ban it. There's actually petitions against it so they can take it off Unicode and Apple takes it away and because it's too passive aggressive.
Fuck.
Like, well, how is that passive aggressive? So when my girlfriend says, "Hey, I'm on the way," what am I supposed to write instead of a thumbs up? Now am I supposed to be like, "Okay, bitch"? Like, no, the thumbs up is just fine. It does its job.
Right.
Now, are there people that might misconstrue and use it the wrong way? Of course. But are the rest of us supposed to not be allowed to use it anymore because a bunch of dumb fucks don't know how to use an emoji the correct way? No. It's that's, I guess, the point of it is we live in a culture where one person's mistake becomes our culture's mistakes.
It's true.
One person fucks up and now everybody else has to suffer. And that sucks. There's a guy in town that robs 7-Eleven and now they have to shut the store down. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So why do we have to cancel an emoji? Because a bunch of couple idiots fucking use it the wrong way.
Oh, fucking A.
We live in such a coddled culture. Are you a fan of the show The Office?
That was another one like Seinfeld where I have seen episodes, but I haven't seen the whole thing.
Oh, okay. So I love The Office, and I've seen it more times than I can count because it's also one of my son's favorite shows. And there's a character on there, Dwight Schrute. I think he's amazing. So I'm talking about the American version.
Oh, yeah.
And it's awesome because he's like a no holds barred. And me and my son laughed so hard the first time we ever saw it, where he's talking about being coddled, and then they start talking about butts for some reason. And Dwight goes, "Don't even get me started on how coddled the American anus is." And dude, I just lost it. Because first of all, in the context of the show, it's just fucking brilliant the way they put it in. But just even in a primetime television show to hear, "Don't even get me started on how coddled the American anus is." I just lost it because I was like, my son's like, "Why are you laughing so hard?" I'm like, "Because I've traveled all over the world, so I understand that." It was brilliant joke by Greg Daniels.
That is a great
Amazing. Just because it wasn't "Don't get me started on how coddled the anus is." It was "Don't get me started on how coddled the American anus is."
Yes.
And I thought it was fucking brilliant. And the joke went over so many people's heads.
Oh, I'm just trying not to laugh harder just at the idea because it makes so much sense.
It does. It was brilliant. But by adding the word American, it kind of gave a social contemporary raise on we are too much like, "Oh, you said you don't like me, so now I need therapy." No. If your dad abused you and all this bad fucking crazy shit happened to you, you need therapy. But if some 13-year-old kid at the gas station said you look ugly, you don't fucking need therapy.
No.
But we now live in a world where if you walk to the gas station and some little shithole kid says, "Oh, you're ugly," now I need therapy because it's an excuse. And I'm not saying that's all people, because I think the majority of people aren't like that. But the problem we live in is even if 5% of the people do that, now it becomes a thing,
Mm-hmm.
Could be wrong.
No, it does make sense.
But we live in the whole thing we were talking about is the whole, if 5% of the people are upset that a 13-year-old said they're ugly at a gas station, now it becomes 20% because of the way that capitulation works. And now 20% becomes 25, it becomes 30, it becomes 35. And then you just spiral downward into now 90% of the people need therapy because some dumb shithead kid at the gas station said, "Hey, you're fat." Because my response is, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm fat. Well, guess what? That means I have money and I eat well. So goodbye."
It's true.
But we love in this culture to cut people down.
Yes.
And I don't agree with that. I have a lot of physical deformities, not deformities, but I have a lot of physical characteristics that are not ideal. But I don't get cut down for it 10 years ago. Now I might. Dude, that's my son's biggest thing. I'm like, "Hey, bud, Soren, it's time for bed." "I don't want to go to bed." "Yeah, you got to go to bed." "Okay, whatever, fatty." The difference is I'm his parent, so I'm not dealing with some little shithead at the gas station. Because if my son goes, "Okay, whatever, fatty," I'm like, "Okay, whatever. No more games." I have the power and control.
Yeah.
I don't have that power and control over some little fucking shithead kid at the gas station. And unfortunately, the way the law works, I'm not allowed to punch him in the face.
Not anymore.
No. But my son is actually very big and very strong, and he learns MMA. So the next thing I'll just do is be like, "Hey, you want to go against this little fucker?" One of my friends, his roommate is Greg Hardy, the old UFC champ.
Oh, shit.
So he's actually going to give my son, I'm going to Miami in about a week or two, he's going to give my son MMA lessons.
That's so cool.
So I told my kid, I was like, "Look, dude, you're going to learn from the ex-UFC heavyweight champ. That does not give you an excuse to be a fucking prick.
Right.
And if I see you doing that, I won't come after you. I will call Greg Hardy and say, 'You put my kid in this place.'" But no, my kid's good. He would never do that. He just he wants to learn from Greg because he's like, "Hey, Dad, all these kids at school, they're fucking assholes. They're pricks. And he goes, I want to learn how to, I don't want to fight them, but I want to learn how to defend myself against them if they cause something for me. And I was like, all right, well, we're going to go to Miami, and then Greg's going to teach you. Doesn't hurt that an ex-UFC champ is going to teach him how to defend himself.
That's
because
true.
Greg's thing as a UFC fighter is you don't want to cause fights, you want to end fights.
Yes.
So he already told me, he was like, the first thing I'm going to teach your kid is I'm not going to teach him striking. I'm not going to teach him any of this. I'm going to teach him submissions. So he ends the fight. So when somebody comes up to your son at school, causes issues, causes problems, he's going to put him on his ass and say, are we done? And I was like, thank you.
I love the sound of that.
So I'm going to take him in 2 weeks, and Greg Hardy's going to actually teach him how to do submissions. Doesn't help because, it doesn't hurt that my kid loves him because, his old stuff he used to do when he was in NFL. So he gets to be the cool kid too and come back to school and be like, yeah, I just learned MMA submissions from the UFC champ, and he used to be in the NFL. And I was like, bud, just don't be an asshole about it.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure who you're talking to the right way. That's the whole thing.
For sure.
That's what I like about your interviews. You don't... I've seen some interviews where people were fucking pricks, dude. I have seen it. I've been part of them. You conduct yourself very professional.
And I just think that's the right thing to do. I mean, like, if I'm taking someone's time, they're also taking my time. So if I come at you professionally, I expect the same in kind. And sometimes it doesn't happen, like you just mentioned. But, as long as I can maintain that professionalism, at least one side is still, just trying to keep things maintained.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to jump off here in a second.
Oh, sure.
I got to get up with my kid in the morning. But the last couple of things I did want to talk to you about, I didn't know if you had any questions interview-wise that you did want to ask since we were just kind of shooting the shit. So there's that. And also, I am going to talk to my manager tomorrow and see if I can hook you up with some other interviews that you can't get on your own. So if there's like a list of bands that you want to get, because I know you have the full potential to get a lot of those on your own, but if there's some bands that you can't get for any reason that you need some help with, send me a list. I'll try and get them for you.
Fuck, that means everything. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, send me a list. I'll see what I can do. I'm not promising anything.
Oh, for sure.
But if there's 2 out of 10 that I can get for you that you really want to do that for some reason you don't have the connection with or whatever, if there's anything I can do with that, gladly help you out on that.
I can't say it enough. Thank you. That just means so much that you give enough of a fuck to even want to do that.
Yeah, just give me a list and I'll see what I can do. Not promising the world, but hey man, maybe 2 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, even just the offer means a lot. I mean, whether everything comes out of it or nothing comes out of it, the fact that you would even try.
Yeah, of course. So what I would propose is, like, if you have a list of bands that you really want that you can't get on your own, obviously there's a lot of people that you work with that you can get the interviews. I'm talking bands that you don't have like any kind of connection with.
Sure.
Send me a list, and if you just want to formulate it in an email and just say, hey, my name is Josh, I run this, and then I'll just pass the email off and see what happens from there. Go for it, and I'll pass it off to the powers that be. See what I can do for you, man. Fuck.
Yeah, I will definitely work on that and make sure to send that your way. And
yeah. And so I'm terrible about that kind of stuff because I'm just the guitarist. So my email communication is like, hey, dude, fucking do this. I'm used to that.
Yeah.
Not very professional. So I would prefer if you wrote the email and I just forward it off, because it'll probably be a lot better than me being like, hey man, I know this dude. My email will come across very Jack Black. So I prefer if you actually wrote the thing and then I'll just forward it over.
I'm just picturing that in my head too, like a full Jack Black email, like.
Well, so but before we do get off the phone, is there anything musically or any other questions that you did want to ask that I haven't covered or anything?
I think we covered so much. I mean, like...
We did.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's stuff...
We didn't really talk any music stuff, though,
True, but, kind of like what you talked about with, like, Andrew WK. Like, you had the idea of, like, wanting to talk about music, and you talked about everything else besides music, and that made for a more intriguing interview. I kind of feel this went the same way.
At the same time, when I did do the Andrew WK interview, so we did kind of shoot the shit, and we talked about the movies and the books and all that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm not saying this is with you and I, but I'm such a huge Andrew WK fan, man. I love the guy to death. So, like, towards the end, I was like, hey, so I do have these questions, because there was some things I was very curious about.
Oh, sure.
So I did throw those questions at the end to him. I'm like, hey, so when you were doing all these party songs and stuff. So I threw all those questions in. So if you have those, I don't mind answering them. I just wanted to throw it out there in case you did have anything like that, since we haven't talked on the phone.
Oh yeah, and I probably would have been the same way with Andrew WK. I mean, like, what was it like working with John Tardy? Like, did you talk about like death metal? Yeah,
that's pretty much what I did. I was like, how are you like this party dude and you're writing this, but you're working with all these death metal guys? Like, what are your favorite death metal bands?
Yeah. But I think really it just like comes down to, it's just like I just wanted to show like my appreciation. Like, I still have my Deliver Us promo picture from Sounds of the Underground, which you and the rest of the band autographed at Sounds of the Underground 2007. I still have that with me. I look at it all the time. It means a lot to me. That was like a watershed moment for me for a lot of different reasons, like friends I was with and like at the show and stuff. And I finally got to see a band that I loved and cared about so much that I finally got to see them live. I didn't get to see many shows until after I graduated high school and was able to go out and do stuff. And that was like one of the very first ones I was able to do. So, it's just like, I think about that all the time because you guys put on such a great fucking show and I love the albums that you were a part of. And, of course, like, I know you have a disdain for it, but I still love the Kris Norris project. And it's just like,
don't get me wrong. I don't have a disdain for it. I do not. I just have a disdain for being told what I was allowed and not allowed to do, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I remember the discussion. I was just looking for the right word as I was mumbling over my words, but just like being able to keep in contact like this. I know we've been trying to do an interview for years, and for one reason or another, it never ended up happening. But just being able to sit down like this and just be able to have like real fucking discussions. Like, we got to talk about music. We also got to talk about the state of the world. We got to talk about some funny stuff. We got to cover so much ground. And, whether the entire interview goes up or if you want some stuff edited out, or, I could send you the interview if there's anything that you want to edit out or anything, or if you want me